Hello, Mueller Junkies. This is AG, and I have some exciting news. We are going to be launching our new online store next Monday, August 20th. We'll have all sorts of new swag along with all of your old favorites. And you'll want to buy your Sexy Justice calendar this week if you haven't already, because starting August 20th, those are only going to be available for new patrons and at our live events. And speaking of live events, get your tickets to our next live show at this year's Politicon in Los Angeles. We'll be there October 20th and 21st, and we'd love to see you there. So mark your Sexy Justice calendars, and we will launch our new online store August 20th, and we will see you live on the podcast main stage at Politicon in Los Angeles in October. For details on both, visit us at MuellerSheWrote.com, where you can always become a patron. We don't know what may come of us as our podcast grows, but if you become a patron now, you will always get the bonus episodes in the newsletter. We promise that we'll be part of any deal that we might make, so sign up now. You'll be glad you did.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
What do I have to get involved with Putin for? I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
So, it is political. You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. Like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist.
Hello, welcome to Mueller, She Wrote. I'm your anonymous host, AG, Smashing the Crotch Act, a.k.a. the Hatch Act. I work in Trump's executive branch, until he purges me at least, so for now, I use a pseudonym. With me, as always, is Jaleesa Johnson.
Hello.
And Jordan Coburn.
Hello.
What a crazy week, you guys. I spent the week in D.C., and I got to meet Scott Dworkin and Robert McGuire and David Priest, as well as some listeners, including our good friend Janelle Hampton.
Oh, yay!
Her friend was there. And I got to meet a wonderful sign holder at the Kremlin Annex protests, and her name was April, and she was delightful. I got to speak at the Kremlin Annex protests as well, and I toured the White House, so I was inside.
That's so awesome.
And I can't wait to take it back from the shit given. So I had a ton of fun. What did you guys do this week?
I just kind of hung out.
That's good, though. Downtime is nice.
Yeah. I did a lot of like mental health me days.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And I know that you're working now,
right.
Your phone banking.
Yes.
That's so great.
It's political too, which is so nice to do a job that feels relevant. I just call people basically and ask what their opinions are about Donald Trump, and if I get them to continue answering after that question, we ask more specific things, but that's usually when people hang up the phone. Yeah.
Well, that's so cool. That's very important. That's one way that we can make a difference, and I'm really glad that you're doing that. What about you?
I started my first week on the job. Some fucking lady on Twitter tried to get me fired because I responded to a Trump status once, and I said something very mild. I was like, "You're a disgrace to humanity. I can't wait till you're gone." Whatever.
Can't wait till you die. Something really mild like that.
And she comments, "I bet your employer." She tags UC San Diego, and she's like, "Are you okay with your employers saying these things? Are you sure you want them on your staff or whatever?" And then I responded. I was like, all right, this is the most mild comment to try to get someone fired over, first off. And then she responds, "Oh, don't worry, I've already contacted them and your supervisor and your..." You just list off
she
all
knows
these.
Who that is.
Yes, dude. And then I reported her on Twitter, and then they fucking got her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's justice.
Good. Yeah, somebody tried to fax some anti-gun thing I said on Instagram to my agency, to the federal government. Like, just, I don't know if they just picked a random fax at the federal government offices and sent it in there, but eventually made it down to my public relations officer, and she's like, "Hey, this is hilarious."
What the fuck? I can't believe these people literally are okay just trying to ruin someone's life.
Yeah, and I don't think they realize that as government employees, we have First Amendment protections. Private industries don't have that. Remember the lady on the bike who flipped off the motorcade?
Right.
She worked for a private company. They fired her for that. You can't do that in the federal government because of First Amendment protections. So, ha ha ha.
Yeah, that's actually, UC San Diego is technically a public university. There's no hashtag thing I have to worry about, right? Okay, we're basically privatized because everything's fucked, but I still tote around being a public university.
So aside from all that, there was a ton of news this week. Jaleesa, you're going to cover an update on 666 Fifth Avenue, or Satan's Tower, I like to call it.
Oh, yeah.
Devil's Tower is actually a cool rock formation, so I don't want to call it that, so we'll call it Satan's Tower. And Jordan has an update on Devin Nunes. I'm going to be going over Manafort's trial. And we also have some amazing guests this week, including Andrea Chalupa from the Gaslit Nation podcast. I had the opportunity to meet her sister in D.C. this week, and that was a lot of fun. They're absolutely great ladies, full throttle in the resistance, and I love them both.
Awesome.
And we have MSNBC contributor and former U.S. attorney under Obama in Birmingham, Alabama, Joyce Vance. She's one of my favorite MSNBC contributors, so we're going to talk to her a little bit. She answers and clears up some legal questions that I have, since I am not a lawyer, even though my name is AG. So we have a lot to get to, so let's jump in with just the facts. On Monday, we learned that a U.S. District Court judge issued a ruling invalidating the Treasury's new rule that organizations such as the NRA do not have to list their dark money donors. I mentioned this possibility to Robert McGuire in a previous episode, so let's listen to that clip really quick. Now, could there be any lawsuits filed against this decision that might end up resulting in a stay on this new Treasury policy, or is it just kind of nothing we can do about it unless Congress acts?
Yeah, I would say I haven't heard of anyone floating that idea, and I feel like I would have if that was a possibility.
So this is a big win for the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, or CREW, in Washington, D.C., which is a watchdog group that ended up filing suit against the FEC. And that's what kind of I was speculating in that clip. Like, is anybody suing these mofos for this? Because this doesn't seem right. They were doing it as part of the whole Citizens United dark money donors to super PACs, and this could have implications for this new Treasury rule as well. This will anyway. It's like a small, tiny step in the direction of repealing Citizens United, and I love it.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Now, this ruling is likely to be appealed,
right?
But we'll see where it ends up. It's good that it's being adjudicated.
Mm-hmm. And the NRA is losing support day by day, so hopefully their appeal is weak as fuck.
Yeah.
They don't have any lawyers. They have no money. Sad face.
Progress is gradual, but it feels like progress.
Yeah, and we have to hand it to the Parkland kids, honestly.
Totally.
Yeah.
The Kushner's family finally unloaded 666, and Jaleesa has the details on that for us later in the show. Then, you guys, the craziest installation yet of the Lube the Truth tour. Trump admitted to collusion in a tweet when he said that the Trump Tower meeting was set up to get dirt on Hillary.
Right.
And not only, he's been denying this forever, and his lawyers have been saying, no, that's not the case. And not only does this mean the president is admitting that his campaign conspired with a foreign adversary to get opposition research on a political opponent, but it sort of tosses his son under the bus for lying to Congress about the meeting. And it puts them both in the obstruction scope of the Mueller probe, since admitting they fabricated the statement about adoptions, the one that Corallo quit over, that spokesperson, their legal team spokesperson. He was on Air Force One. He's like, I quit, you guy. I can't.
He jumped off.
He just parachute. Bye.
Eject.
I'll see you guys later.
Just lands on Mueller's arms.
Thunk.
It's like, I knew you'd jump.
And he's, I've got you. He's wearing his Marine uniform in my head. I don't know. So yeah, I totally threw Don Jr. under the bus. That's insane. It's so obvious to me that the Lube the Truth tour, which is what we call Trump and Rudy's attempt to get the truth out to his base slowly, so that if Trump ever does sit down with Mueller, he won't have to lie to Mueller, right? He's like putting off doing these negotiations, putting off the sit-down interview. Meanwhile, kind of releasing the truth here and there a little bit so that he doesn't have to lie to he's basically he knows it's a quote-unquote perjury trap for him, which is not. You just don't lie, and
right.
you aren't trapped. And that's just kind of how he's doing it. And this is one of the big pieces. And if I sit there and I think about all the things Mueller's going to ask him about, Giuliani's been leaking those things bit by bit, and we've talked about that on the show before.
Also, the fact that it came out now that his previous explanation for that meeting was they were talking about adoptions, and now he comes out saying it was to get dirt on Hillary Clinton, that corroborates something that we all knew all along, which is anytime adoptions are brought up, it's always for something sketchy. It's never adoptions.
Yep, adoption beans.
Adoption beans.
So anyway, since Mueller, we've talked about Mueller being more likely to write a report than drop an indictment on the president, right? Because of the DOJ policy that says, don't indict a sitting president, write a report to Congress. The court of public opinion can weigh heavily on the inevitable impeachment hearings that will ramp up once we flip Congress. So at least for Trump, this is good news, well, not good news, but, this is kind of Trump's strategy, but he's sort of just hanging everybody else out in the wind. Junior is fucked.
Have you lost your mind? He's a thief. He stole my bike, you liar. I swear I didn't do it, Dad.
Not to mention good old Jay Sekulow, who adamantly came out on television and said the meeting was not about dirt. It was about adoptions, and that Trump did not dictate the adoption statement. And much like Kellyanne Conway's alternative facts, Sekulow is now saying, well, the facts have developed. So his story changed with the facts. Dude, facts don't develop, man. They just exist. And the events of that meeting haven't changed. Your bullshit story about it has. So if you believe this dude, you're not the brightest crayon in the sea.
Maybe they have a time machine. They're going back and developing the facts.
It's just weird. What a weird thought. Like, somebody had tweeted out, like, innocent people have one story, and it never changes. It's the liar that has to change their story. And this is all the facts are developing. No, you knew all the facts. And if you didn't, you're a terrible lawyer or you have a shitty client, which is true. Yeah, all right. So way back in March of 2017, John McCain said in a speech to the Senate that Rand Paul is working for Putin. And he said this when the Ransky would not support the addition of Montego into NATO, right? He's like, you're working for Putin. Well, this week, Rand Paul told reporters he hand-delivered a letter to Putin on behalf of Trump when he had a bunch of other traitors there with him on the 4th of July. Do you remember that meeting? The White House said the letter was meant to be a means of introducing Rand Paul to Putin. And the White House says Rand asked Trump to write the letter. Like, hey, buddy, can you write a letter to Putin so I have a reason to talk to him? That sounds so... Like, what letter? What did the letter say? Like, hello, Vlad. Do you like Rand? Check this box. My dearest Pootie, that's Rand Paul standing in front of you. His hair is almost as good as mine. XOXO. Dear Vlad, here are the passwords for Florida voting machines. Wink, wink. Like, what did the letter say? Like, meet my friend. That's just the weirdest 9th grade thing that I've ever heard in my life.
It is.
And what's extra weird is that Russia somehow got a hold of and leaked a Lindsey Graham bill imposing heavy sanctions on Russia. And I'll be goddamned if that wasn't hand-delivered by one of those senators on that trip in July. And that's conjecture, but put some beans on it. And then Trump magically enacted some sanctions this week, which were due in January, by the way. So don't start sucking his hoo-ha now.
Only 8 months late. Bureaucracy.
Oh, right. Of course. Space Force. So, yeah, sanctions. And now, I bet... I don't know. I would love to hear the back channel phone call or code in a picture of flowers or whatever from Trump to Putin saying, maybe that's what was in the letter. Sorry. These are just temporary. Don't freak out. Or, pretend to freak out. Everything will be fine. I don't know. Russia played along, though. They came out slamming the sanctions and warning of retaliation. Like, what are you going to do that you're not already doing? Like, what retaliation? Are you going to cut off our oligarchs? Like, release the P-tape. Do that. I'm down for that.
Yeah. Are you going to interfere in our elections?
we know that one.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, what else are you going to do besides completely dismantle our democracy and take apart NATO? What else do you have? I don't want to know, but I'm sure it seems just like it's probably a fake thing. I don't know. Anyway, Wednesday, the special master in the Cohen case filed another update to her final report, saying that the 4,008 pieces of privileged information she had delegated previously were not all actually privileged, because she put out the 4,008 pieces and then the prosecution said pretty much filed a thing saying for all of them saying no, none of them are privileged. And then she came back and said, right, you're right, 2,558 of them are not actually privileged, and handed those over to the prosecutor. So that's the end of it. They have everything now. So the clock is ticking on Cohen. So that's an interesting thing. Then, Lordy, there are more tapes, this time featuring Jordan's boyfriend, Devin Nunes. She's going to go over that for us later in the show.
Who I'm now learning is being referenced as a cow fucker.
Yeah.
What? Did you know?
I didn't know people were calling him that.
No, but what's really funny is...
Because he fucks farmers, not because he fucks cows.
Oh, okay.
I think that you're going to talk about the farmer petition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah.
All right, then Senator Warren tweeted that Rusal, a subsidiary of Deripaska's Russian aluminum company, is getting an exemption on aluminum tariffs. And they got that exemption days after the Treason Summit in Helsinki.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we kind of saw that coming. Yeah. Oh, and that was one of the sort of faults with the Magnitsky Act, is that the president can just take whoever he wants off that OFAC list. Just be like, nope, but this is for tariffs. He's like, I'm not going to, you're fine, you know. Then Friday, Roger Stonehenge, Rock, Andrew Miller, was held in contempt for refusing to appear after being subpoenaed by the grand jury in the Mueller probe. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell, incidentally, she's the same judge that ruled that dark money donors can't remain anonymous.
Hell yeah.
At the beginning of the show. She made a ruling Friday after a sealed hearing. It turns out that Miller held himself in contempt of court so he could appeal the decision. I don't understand that.
What?
I hold myself in contempt! Why should you be any different? Take him away.
And then the Manhattan Madam also testified this week to the grand jury. And we learned this week that Mueller subpoenaed Randy Credico to testify before the grand jury next month, September 7th, actually, which first of all tells us that the conspiracy indictments aren't going to drop until at least after September 7th, when Manafort's second trial is scheduled to start, by the way, like 3 days later, or 10 days later, and Papadop is scheduled to be sentenced on the 7th as well. Credico is the comedian guy, remember, who Roger Stone claims was his back channel to Assange? And he was subpoenaed last year to the Intel Committee and appeared then. Check this out from episode 5, you guys. Also, Roger Stone told the House Intel Committee that his WikiLeaks liaison was Randy Credico. Credico has now been subpoenaed to testify in mid-December. So it appears that Mueller is circling Stone. We've said this recently, and he's the only one in the group that hasn't heard a peep from Mueller, and he brags about that, but that's not something to be happy about, because that means you're probably a target.
So many beans. Episode 5?
I know. And I wonder if there's any... I was actually going to say if there's any stone left unturned. That's stupid.
It's not.
I wonder if this could be the final piece of the conspiracy investigation, or... I don't know, it could be the beginning. We could not even know, but it seems like this is kind of the last group, at least that we know about, that he's relentlessly going after outside of just Trump himself. So
wasn't the Manhattan Madam also doing the whole Nunberg thing, saying that she wasn't going to testify and she'd never say anything against Roger Stone?
She did, but she went.
Yeah.
Somebody probably explained it to her. I don't know. I don't know where we are in this investigation. I'm feeling, though, that the end is near. I feel like September is going to be a huge month. I knew this month would be a huge month, and it hasn't disappointed. And I don't know how close up to the election. I know Rudy Giuliani has set like a September 1 drop dead date for you can't do anything after September 1 because the elections are in November. But I don't know what the actual... I haven't even seen... the policy. I think it's more of a norm. And so, of course, they want Mueller to, ascribe to all the norms, but they clearly don't care about norms, except when it comes to this. So we'll see what kind of things go down in September, or if they get put off until after the election. I really don't know. But there is a confirmation hearing for Kavanaugh September 4th, and we'll talk about that shortly. So, yeah, I really think that it's wrapping up. It seems to me, at least, which brings me to what happens with this podcast after the investigation is over. And a lot of folks in media and listeners have been asking this, and the answer is nothing. We aren't going anywhere. First, believe me when I say we could spend the rest of our lives untangling this monster of an investigation. We've done 41 main episodes, over 30 bonus episodes for patrons, and as you all know, we've only chipped the tip of the iceberg, as the experts say, because the news is coming at us at this insane pace. So there's always going to be a need for a voice for justice in politics, aside from this investigation. So we want to continue to be that voice. So we're not going anywhere. Don't worry.
Someone said we should be gardening, she wrote. Just like change our name because we could talk about anything and they would still listen.
Oh, how do you garden on the radio?
Yeah. It was just like we literally could, because that's how cool our listeners are. Like I feel like they would be cool with like just listening to us kind of take down anything, even if it were the Mueller investigation forever, or just regular news.
Yeah, gardening conspiracies.
Or just foreign influence, or there's a million things we could do.
Justice in politics is always going to be an issue. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Trump wants to be president for life. That's ridiculous. I think we need a special prosecutor for life. I think there should just always be a Bob Mueller just investigating the shit out of our politicians.
Yeah. Can we force him to do it?
Yeah.
We would have to probably put a constitutional amendment in or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say they'd have to be appointed by Mars or something that's incredibly objective.
Maybe the Space Force can do it.
Oh, it all makes sense now.
I was born in space. Come here to save the world.
The aliens have to build the wall, though.
Oh, man.
Friday, the Boston Globe called on all newspapers across America to publish op-eds or opinion pieces trashing Trump for his attacks on the media. We're not a newspaper, but count us in. The fourth estate is under fire, along with facts which have been referred to as malleable or in developing or alternative facts by both the Trump White House and the only entertainment cable network he watches. Everyone familiar with Orwell knows exactly what Trump is up to. So this week, I wanted to bring on the author of Orwell and the Refugees, The Untold Story of Animal Farm, and she's also the co-host of one of my favorite pods, Gaslit Nation. Please welcome Andrea Chalupa to Mueller, She Wrote. Andrea, welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited.
I'm really excited to have you with us today. So you had been asked, so I just want to set this up a little bit. You'd been asked in 2012 to give a speech, or maybe it was earlier than that because you'd done a lot of research, but you were asked to give a speech at the National Press Club in D.C., and you had collected so much research on Animal Farm and Orwell that you ended up writing a book about it, and it's all about how a Ukrainian refugee helped get the story out, and that's very personal for you. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is a very long journey. So for many years, since 2004, I was researching, writing a screenplay, a proper feature film, historical drama on Stalin's genocide famine in Ukraine and the Kremlin information war that covered it up. And I was telling this story through this real-life Welsh journalist by the name of Gareth Jones. And it's actually the anniversary of his death this month in August. On August 12th, he was killed the day before his 30th birthday out on a reporting trip, research suggests, by the Soviet secret police. And that was in retaliation for being the first strident, independent voice in the Western media that relentlessly was exposing the fact that Stalin deliberately created a famine in Ukraine. He sealed the borders of Ukraine, wouldn't let anyone out, and took out all the food and had Soviet agents stealing food from the people. And it was a deliberate starvation. And in fact, the human rights lawyer Raphael Lemkin, who first coined the phrase genocide, used Stalin's famine in Ukraine as a classic example of genocide. And the Kremlin to this day continues to deny it. And so working on this screenplay, I needed, nobody wanted it. Like no producers wanted my script because it was so depressing and just maybe I wasn't really a great writer at the time. But so I was looking for some happier ending, something to give the script some hope and give myself some hope because it's an uphill battle to get any movie made. And so I turned to George Orwell for inspiration. And I was reading Christopher Hitchens' introduction to Animal Farm. And just a few sentences in his introduction immediately struck me. He wrote that Orwell had struggled to get Animal Farm out into the world. No publisher wanted it. And then finally, some small press put out some copies, and one miraculously ended up in the hands of Ukrainian refugees who immediately understood what Orwell was trying to say with Animal Farm. And these refugees worked with him to create Animal Farm in Ukrainian and give it out in the refugee camps. And I was just stunned by this. So the fact that Stalin's own victims took their power back to get their story out into the world through Orwell, partnering with Orwell. And as I was researching this story, I decided to make these refugees and Orwell part of my screenplay to show that the truth never dies. That Gareth may have been killed by Soviet agents, but his reporting lives on in Orwell's Animal Farm. And the more I researched, the more I discovered that Gareth, this young Welsh journalist, and George Orwell had all these real life connections. For instance, they shared the same literary agent. They were both good friends with they were both friends with Malcolm Muggeridge. They were around roughly the same age, and they were very much interested in the same parts of the world. And so, it's so I just imagined sort of their paths crossing. And so now Orwell was a character in my screenplay. And what was even more amazing, when I put all this Orwell magic into my screenplay, I took it out to market and still producers didn't want it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to do now. And I went to my uncle's farmhouse in the Catskills for New Year's Eve, and I was telling him about this whole film project. And I hadn't seen him in a while. And I told him like the whole happy ending of the script. The truth comes out through Orwell's Animal Farm, through these Ukrainian refugees in the refugee camps of World War II. And my uncle looks at me and goes, "Oh yeah, I have a copy of that Ukrainian edition of Animal Farm. I picked it up in the refugee camp when I was a kid."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and my aunt then got up from the table and grabbed the book and a book I'd only seen in my research and photos, and handed it to me. And so now I have it. And it was this amazing sign from the universe, basically telling me, like, keep going, keep going. And shortly after, the script was optioned, and we just finished shooting it for 4 months in Poland and Ukraine and Scotland with a 3-time Academy Award nominated director, Agnieszka Holland, who grew up in the Soviet Union in Soviet-occupied Poland. Both her mother and father were journalists. Her father was arrested by the Soviet secret police, and his official cause of death was suicide while under police interrogation. So this story was very personal to her too. And we had an incredible cast of actors, all of them, even actors who would just join us for a day on set for a couple scenes. All of our actors were just phenomenal. The film stars James Norton as Gareth Jones, Vanessa Kirby as this wonderful reporter who helps him get the truth out, and then Peter Sarsgaard as Walter Duranty, the Pulitzer Prize winning Moscow bureau chief for the New York Times, who works with the Soviets to suppress the story and succeeds. And what Walter Duranty does is so vile. It's of course not as vile as the October 31st, 2016 New York Times story saying that the FBI saw no links between Trump and Russia. But I think modern viewers can understand just what Walter Duranty was up to and how frustrating this was. So basically, my book Orwell and the Refugees was all of my research, and there's a whole Orwell connection. I just had all of it. So so the press club, the National Press Club in DC, asked me to present on it, and I did, and I put it. I put it all online as an Amazon Kindle. A friend of mine, Molly Crabapple, who was the artist of the Occupy Wall Street movement, she did the cover for it. And shortly thereafter, some college kids in Toronto called me up and said, "We want to send you on a college tour of Canada for 2 weeks. Would you be willing to do that?" And I was like, "Sure." And they're like, "But we need you to make it like a proper book." And so I had to figure out how to make it a proper book. And I self-published, and I went on this proper very drunk college tour of Canada talking about Orwell to all these audiences across Canada, and that was so fun. And then when I got home to the States, the big news was that Ukrainians were launching an uprising against their Putin puppet, Yanukovych. And when the Western press was largely ignoring the story, like covering Justin Bieber's arrest in Miami while Ukrainians were being killed by riot police and government snipers, I then turned to the network of college students across Canada that I met on my speaking tour and worked with them to immediately activate this hashtag, Digital Maidan, and worked with Ukrainian diaspora groups around the world to quickly launch this like SOS hashtag, calling on world leaders, major media to pay attention to protesters who are being killed fighting for democracy in Ukraine. And within minutes, we were trending #1 globally. We got responses on Twitter from the Prime Minister of France, major people like Gary Kasparov, Russell Brand, Bianca Jagger. We were written about in the press around the world, and that created this big movement to help raise money, whatever was needed for medical supplies for the protests. And we were able to crowdfund to send a videographer over there to do a live stream in English to connect English audiences to what was going on minute by minute on the ground, and really sort of compensate for the lack of response from the Western media. So the whole experience of making this book, Orwell and the Refugees, was absolutely life-changing, and it led to much larger and more important work, which also positioned me to be very sensitive and active to the rise of Trump and Manafort.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was going to tie that in, because, I mean, first of all, aside from Trump and Manafort and Yanukovych and Timoshenko. Aside from all of that, before any of that happened, the number of coincidences that you stumbled upon in your research is astounding. And you're like you said, the whole universe was sort of lining itself up for this. And then I was kind of hoping you could tell me what how it sort of went for you after you'd done all that research, after you talked to your family, you got that book in your hand, and now all of a sudden we have Manafort, who had worked for Yanukovych, as you said, Putin puppet in Ukraine, the annexation of Crimea, the softening of the language in the RNC platform, all of that kind of just sort of what was that like for you to sort of, the parallels are intense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like living a really bad movie, bad because it was real life. But there were moments where it was like, I was really wondering whether we were all stuck in some simulation by some advanced AI writer's room with a really wicked sense of humor. Because even moments like during the recounts, right after Trump won, I was desperately calling Alex Halderman's office, and the computer scientist at the heart of the recounts. And this is when we first, within days of the election, and leaving him a voicemail. And I turn around and I look, and right behind me is this menacing black Trump building. I was just okay, all right. And so, yeah, there's a lot of moments throughout that felt horrible because, wow, this would, on one hand, this would make a really great film, but on the other hand, lives are going to be destroyed by this regime, and it's of course going to strengthen Putin's influence around the world as well, which will also lead to the destruction of other lives and alliances. So all of it has felt terrible and surreal in a way that I still am not used to.
And so that kind of brings us to your podcast, Gaslit Nation, which I absolutely love. And I'm assuming this probably came out of this reliving of a bad movie that you're talking about. So what are the connections there? Tell us about your podcast.
So yeah, when I was on set, so the idea of the podcast, well, Sarah and I wanted to do it for a while because Sarah and I talk on the phone regularly. What you hear on the podcast is what we do on the phone, but there's a lot more shade throwing and gossiping. We're much meaner on the phone, so we kind of dial it back for the audience because we want people to still talk to us. But when we finally said, okay, let's get this together and make this podcast happen, that was really, I would say, born out of my film, because I was on set from I was in Europe February, March, April, May for 4 intense months working on this movie, and it was really long hours and very isolating. And I kept looking at America on Twitter, and and American Twitter just looked like a pit of screams. I did not want to go home at all, and I just kept dreading it. And that's that feeling of dread is even captured in the film, where Vanessa Kirby, playing this British reporter based in Berlin, has to go to Hitler's Berlin, and she's dreading it. And there's this scene that just captures how I was feeling at that time about having to go home to Trump's America. And so to sort of give myself something to come home to, I Skyped with Sarah, and I was like, we need to do this podcast because I need something to come home to that's going to make me feel like I can get through this year. And so we reached out to Dame, and they jumped on it right away, and they've been really lovely to us. And Sarah and I were the whole goal of the podcast was, first and foremost, the war is in the mind. They're trying to demoralize us. They have this fire hose of terror that's just blasting this corruption in our faces and sort of challenging us. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. There's nothing you can do about it. So what they really want is for people to check out and stop being engaged and just feel psychologically, emotionally defeated by them. And the way Sarah and I combat that is through our friendships, through each other. And so we wanted to broaden our circle of friends and just let everybody in on our conversations, and with the hope that we can sort of sustain a larger group of people, just like we help sustain each other. And because that's so important for us to be there for each other right now. And that's really the whole heart of it is sort of, if you can protect your mind and take back your mind from what they're trying to do to it, what this far right is, and especially the media being quite slow and still debating racism and not sort of reluctant to call a lie and racism. So it's just the gaslighting across the board. We want to sort of help sustain people during during the gaslighting that's just ongoing.
Yeah, that's exactly our mission too, is to help prevent fatigue and exhaustion and keep everyone engaged, and offer comfort. And I think it's fascinating that you're kind of realizing your ancestry by doing something like this. And I think that it's absolutely fascinating to, battle this whole Orwellian idea of you don't believe what you see, you don't believe what you hear, fake news, etc., and actually working to get facts out there while also keeping people engaged, I think is the best thing that we can do. So I really appreciate you, and I'm honored that you came to join us today. Do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find information about the film, where they can find information about your book and your pod?
Sure. So I guess they can listen to the podcast on Day Magazine by following @GaslitNation on Twitter. And for anything else that I do, especially on the film, I will be posting on my Twitter account, Andrea Chalupa, so you can go there. But yeah, no, we're really thrilled by all the work that you're doing, and it's everything that you just outlined in terms of staying engaged and fact checking. That's all we were doing in the Ukrainian Revolution to combat Putin's propaganda. So it's really astounding that the war has come to America now, this information war, and that we all have to stay vigilant and stay engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. History repeats, and now I think it's the women's turn.
Yes.
Well, thank you again, Andrea. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. I love your podcast. Please keep it up. There's room for all of us. We need more of us, and I'm really I'm so glad you were able to take time.
Oh my God, my pleasure. I'm a huge fan of Mueller, She Wrote.
Thanks so much. I am a huge fan of Gaslit Nation, so high five, women in podcasting. All right, we'll talk to you soon. I really want to have you back as more stuff develops, okay?
Oh, without question. Thank you so much. This is really great. And let me know if you need anything. And honestly, your podcast is excellent. And I learned so much when I listened to it.
Samesies to you.
Okay, G, talk to you later.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
She's so great, you guys. I love their podcast. Everyone check it out.
It's a great name.
Yeah, Gaslit Nation, yeah. So as soon as you're done subscribing to Mueller, She Wrote, check out Gaslit Nation. They even use the 30,000 email clips in their intro.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's like we're sister pods. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
More news Friday. The DNC served WikiLeaks by tweet. Apparently, WikiLeaks is part of the DNC's lawsuit against the Federation of Russia, as was Kushner. Jaleesa, you reported on that. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
And it appears you can serve someone via tweet, or at least they're trying to. Particularly when they're inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London and you can't go in there, or, I don't know. It was an interesting thing. I'm going to talk to Joyce Vance about it in a little bit, too. So Omarosa wrote a book, and I don't care. Tweet at us if there's something in there about Russia. Otherwise, I don't need a book to know that 45 is a racist asshole. So.
Exactly.
I'm way more interested in Bob Woodward's forthcoming book called Fear. It's got some Russia news in it, apparently. And we may cover that in our next installment of the MSW Book Club. You can join now by visiting patreon.com/MuellerSheWrote. Kavanaugh, as I said before, will have his first confirmation hearing September 4th. Did you say that was Beyonce's birthday?
Oh, yeah, September 4th. She's a Virgo.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Well, there we go.
Maybe she can say, as a birthday present, I'd like you all to do anything in your power to make sure that doesn't go through.
Well, she tried to get Hillary elected. She tried to do everything in her power there. And
yeah, but we got to stop this Kavanaugh thing.
That's true. I'll tweet her.
Yeah, tweet out. She can stop it. Do not stop writing and calling your representatives and senators, and tell them to do everything they can to stop this nomination until they can push the FOIA requests through to get the documents they've requested. That's insane that they've had to resort to filing FOIA requests to get documents to vet this guy. We can't let Trump appoint a guy who thinks the president is above the law with a looming subpoena. Mueller, if you're listening, I hope you find a subpoena and drop it before September 4th. It's just unbelievable to me the Republicans would block the release of documents for senators to read about a judge they're being asked to appoint. All of this from the party that wouldn't even speak to Merrick Garland for over a year. It's gross. I don't know. It blows my mind that that's even our elected officials are doing that.
Yeah.
Anyway, this week Bill Nelson claimed he's a he's in Florida there. He claimed that Russia successfully hacked some of Florida's voting systems. Apparently, he told the Tampa Bay Times that Russians had, quote, penetrated certain counties in the state and now have free rein to move around. God. Unquote. And he said the chair and vice chair of the Intel Committee told him to tell the election supervisors in Florida, but the Department of State, with good old Governor Rick Scott, douchebag, says there's no evidence of the hack and they're asking for specific information. It's like, okay.
That's so scary.
Why not even just take a precaution? Is it a money issue for him?
No, they need the votes.
Winning issue, yeah.
I see,
they need the Russian votes. So, Karen McDougal got her Men's Journal cover from magazine owner David Pecker. And this is to feign payment for her story to make it look like a contract. There was a legit contract, despite Men's Journal objecting, saying, we're going to lose advertisers. We put her on the front page. Apparently, they didn't even take her picture or interview her or tell her about it. They used old pictures and archived content about a workout routine she had. But this whole thing is so that the $150,000 payment to her is not hush money. It's a contract, right? It's not a catch and kill scenario.
Do you think that that'll hold up?
I don't know.
They made her name so tiny on the magazine cover. It's just like...
Yeah, you can't even find it.
Yeah, it's just a weird scenario.
Yeah, and Cohen is wrapped up in this, as we said earlier. The Southern District of New York now has all the evidence, and he's under investigation for tax fraud as well. So, I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to, 2 years later, slap an old photo on the cover of a magazine and say we gave her $150,000 for that, not to keep her mouth shut.
Yeah, the timing is just really sketchy.
Yeah,
it is. And then with the AMI lawsuits about the fourth woman, and it's ridiculous.
And why would men want her workout? I mean, I guess I get if it were like, supposed to be for other reasons, but it's men fitness.
Yeah, Men's Journal.
It's strange.
But so much... Sorry, go ahead.
Here's my workout routine for you fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of men's workout routines is going to a gym and staring at women. So.
Well, see, they could play that card, that it's about the aesthetics, but all their other magazine covers ever were men. So they would have to say that we're taking this new direction conveniently right now for the sake of misogyny. It's like, not misogyny, but like, just sex selling.
But they totally protested this, and Pecker was like, no, do it.
Right.
We're going to lose advertising dollars, so clearly it's a cost-benefit analysis for him to lose these potential advertisers and potential stars, male stars for their covers in the future. It might be worth it to him to tank the whole magazine just to avoid
cover up the political scandal.
Yeah,
this crime.
That is the bright side. That it definitely would insinuate that that was a sketchy thing that for sure happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure though that it's got to be easy to prove. Whether the evidential is direct or circumstantial, I'm sure it'll come up, and I don't know if he's going to get away with it. The way that Mueller and this is of course is probably going to come out in the Southern District of New York, but even their trials have just been impeccable and super detailed, and I'm sure that
by the book,
that whole communication chain about covering it up, giving her the cover, making it happen. I'm sure there are recorded conversations with Cohen where they decided to do that. I mean, I'm sure they're
corroborated
to prove it was a conspiracy to make that $150,000 look like a legit contract. All right, you guys, that's the week's news. We'll be right back. Hey, Mueller Junkies. Thank you so much for supporting our show and supporting women in podcasting. I need to ask you for a quick favor that will not cost you a dime. Please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating, and then subscribe. That simple act goes a long way to helping us get the word out about the Mueller investigation, and more importantly, it expands our efforts to flip Congress blue in November. And don't forget, follow us on Twitter at MuellerSheWrote to be automatically entered to win a PlayStation 4. Don't ask. Thank you so much for listening. We would not be here without you. All right, welcome back. Hot notes. Okay, today, Jordan has some tasty vittles on her cowman, Nunez. But first, if you guys ever grew up in sort of a farming rural area and had, like joined the 4-H club, it's got to be I just imagine it like that. Or like if you've seen Napoleon Dynamite and he's drinking the milk and he's like, this one got into an onion patch. That's just how I envision Nunez with his old mullet. Just
eating crustless sandwiches.
Yeah, totally.
I do like those.
Collecting chicken eggs for a summer job. Do the chickens have large talons? Anyway, that's how I imagine it. But first, Jaleesa, you've done some research for us on what's happening with Satan's Tower, 666 Fifth Avenue, the Kush building. What'd you find out?
That's correct. So last Friday, Jared Kushner, while still working at the White House, mind you, sold off his 666 Fifth Avenue building to a Qatar-linked company called Brookfield Properties. And this company isn't just partially owned by the Qatari government. It's their second biggest investor. And so we've previously reported that Kushner was in a lot of debt over this building. It was $1.4 billion in debt, to be exact. And when he first started working at the White House, he was meeting with potential investors and using his government position as leverage. So this is why he eventually lost his security clearance. As we know, he would basically go to the Qatari government and be like, hey, you want to buy my building? And they were like, no. And so he'd go back to work at the White House and he would push for the U.S. to announce something like a blockade of Qatar, which we did. And then he'd go back to the Qatari government and be like, well, now do you want to buy my building? And then they'd be like, yeah, fine, you psycho, we'll buy your building. So it's just really strange. It just seems like the Kushners and the Qatari government, after doing some research, actually had a really good relationship previously. Just 3 years ago, Brookfield and Kushner Properties partnered up to redevelop a New Jersey mall, and Brookfield also loaned Kushner money to purchase the former New York Times headquarters for $295 million. Not to mention, late last year, Kushner received a $184 million loan from a Qatari-owned company called Apollo, as well as $30 million from an Israeli investor just days before he flew to Israel for his first diplomatic trip to the region. So this is kind of just what he does. He just uses his power very openly, very publicly to get money, and lots of it. And so it just seems like the only issue is that he got caught up. I mean, he's been doing this for like 3 years, so it's just crazy. It's like all in plain sight too. So he's obviously gone to the White House with some really clear connections to the Qatari government, and he also went in with a lot of debt, which means Mueller could tie this to his motive. And we now have all this evidence that he's successfully strong-armed countries like Qatar into investing in his private businesses, which is why I think Jared's eventually going to get jail time for this. It's like, I know he's gotten away with it so far, but I think we're at a point where it's just, he's probably just trying to rack up a lot of money to get a pretty nice commissary when he's in prison. Like, maybe it's all just like, I know I'm committing crimes in front of everyone, but, you know, I still have time. Because he can't be arrested probably until they're ready to get Trump, right? Which is when he's probably not president anymore.
Until they start dropping the conspiracy or the crimes of collusion indictments.
Right.
But it could be separate, kind of like how Manafort's tax and business stuff was kept separate from the collusion.
Yes,
they could drop an indictment on Kushner, but I'm sure what's happening now is Mueller is, I mean, there's so many different lines in that investigation that it's just taking time.
The avenues he could take, like, there's so many. There's the Jared Kushner way, the Donald Trump Jr. way, Ivanka, and then all of them together. Like, it's just, yeah, you're right. It's a matter of which way he wants to go, right? Which way is probably the quickest or the most, I don't know, maybe just the most thorough. Yeah, thorough, like the most sound.
Yeah, and if you think about, if you guys noticed that Rep. Collins was arrested this week for insider trading.
Right.
By Berman, by the way, who's the guy that replaced Preet Bharara.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Ha ha ha.
Their plan didn't work.
Yeah. Berman was installed by Trump, and now he's taken down Collins, which was one of Trump's early supporters. It's not got anything to do with Russia, but the reason I bring it up is because that simple investigation of him being on the board of directors for this medicine company, finding out the drug failed, which is the only thing that keeps this, the only thing this company has, and then telling his son about it, and then his son telling 7 other people about it, and them not losing, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they have the emails, and they have the phone calls, and they have everything. That investigation took, a year to put together? So, like, you got to kind of keep that in mind.
It takes a while to get these bigger things.
And now when you're talking about, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the intel that he gave to the Crown Prince, to get, and then all the different policy shifts and
the Chinese investors, like all of it, like it's all connected with his motive and his history. It's going to take a while.
That's
You're right.
much bulkier. There's tons more evidence than there would be in this simple, straightforward, and absolutely hilarious insider trading case. He stepped down, by the way. So
he did his rebid for election. He's
not going for it. So we actually, it's a pretty solidly red area, but they don't have the name recognition on the incumbent anymore, and so the Democrat might have a chance.
That's amazing. Oh, yeah. That's justice in a weird, karma way.
So it does tie into flipping it blue, which ties into impeachment. So
exactly.
there, I put it together.
Yeah. Didn't this guy Collins
People
also...
can keep listening now.
Yeah. He also asked or called for the Mueller investigation to be shut down. He was one of the first people to say that. So it's always come back to Russia. It's always about covering up for their guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
How many buildings do you think... I don't know. Let's just say Manhattan alone, because their buildings... hella buildings. How many do you think are owned by companies that are huge players in foreign governments?
I think all of them. I think they're all a part. It's one of those billionaire things you do. It's just you own skyscrapers. It's like it becomes like the yachts and stuff, right? It's not even a bad thing, I think, right? It's like the idea is that it's just like
it could be used for money laundering.
I just didn't think.
Oh,
right,
that
yeah,
it can be a bad
that
thing.
piece of it. I just didn't really think. I never see all those buildings and think most of these are owned by foreign governments, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just like these big players in general, like they want to be, oligarchs and stuff that are American.
Well, China bought the one bank building in LA, downtown LA, the one, the one that gets destroyed in Independence Day.
Oh, that's right.
That's how I know it.
It's its biggest claim to fame.
I'm like, yeah, look at that. Whoa. Yeah. It's a lot of foreign investment. It's a lot of foreign investment.
It should be regulated a lot more, I think.
And that they're focusing on bringing manufacturing back and keeping jobs in the United States, but we sell the grand parts of our real estate to foreign investment, and then sometimes we sell visas doing that. It's interesting, because there's I think there's a rule. Don't quote me on this, but if you invest in real estate in the United States or business in the United States, you can get a visa.
Oh, so if you're rich enough.
Yeah. Yeah, you can buy citizenship.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
That sucks.
But if you actually need a safe place to go because your family's being raped and your 13-year-old son is being recruited into gangs, no.
Then we'll separate you
none
so
for
you can't protect your kids while they're raped in the detention camps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have to celebrate Melania's parents becoming citizens, or can we not?
We do not have
That
to.
is chain migration. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to this. Oh, wait, they're white. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
I'm not angry that they have it, of course, because that's what I think other people should have is a better shot,
They have shots.
I celebrate.
Other people should have this.
I celebrate immigration, and I support family reunification and family immigration.
Right.
I do support that. The hypocrisy here of someone who basically stands up and says, if brown people do it, they're going to be rapists, and they're going to be criminals in our country.
Right.
Look at these 5 people on stage. They were all hurt by criminal.
It boils down
immigrants.
to racism so many times.
It's fear. It's xenophobia.
Yeah,
it's a common tool, and the fact that Trump supporters can't see it is just sad.
Right. John Oliver did a great piece about the racism connection to Russia, how it's one of the whitest countries ever compared to the countries that have integrated a lot more around the world. Like Europe used to be very white, and it's still white in a lot of ways, of course, but their princess is now brown, and so that's
but you heard what Laura Ingraham said, right?
What'd she say?
She went on a racist Twitter rant or rant on her show this week, saying, there are certain areas in America that have taken such a huge demographic shift, and it's not the way we want America to look. And especially in places like California and
as a brown person, this is tough.
And she's just she's basically saying it's not as white as it used to be.
Yeah.
And isn't that terrible? We didn't vote for that. She said, we didn't vote for that.
I can never relate to that. I'll never be white enough to be racist.
She got called out pretty hard on it, and then tried to walk back her comments, and it was.
Dude,
she's also the one that has that Twitter gif of her doing the Nazi salute, and then she goes into a wave. It's so unmistakably a Nazi salute.
Yeah. I retweeted something, and this is so funny, guys. First of all, if I retweet something or if I like something, it does not mean that I support everything they've done since birth.
Right.
There's a picture out there of Steve Miller adjusting his coat, and he's kind of making the white power sign, and Snopes apparently is calling it false, even though if you read the Snopes article, it's just their opinion. They're like, I think he was adjusting his jacket. There's we haven't seen the full video to know enough that it's this. And I'm like, well, that's an opinion, then it should be unknown or whatever. And so chill out. And I promise you he's a racist anyway. So
yeah, you don't need that picture or that video. It's just
everybody, it's fine.
Also, back to Laura saying we didn't vote for those demographics. I didn't know we get to vote on what colors of
I would
people
love
are.
To see what that looks like on a ballot.
Yeah. Well, rich people's ballots have that on there.
Oh, snap.
How many brown people do you want to allow in your state this year?
0 to 10.
I had no idea.
10 to 15.
That makes
Those
so
are
much
really
sense
small
now.
increments.
Thanks for letting us in on the secret.
Or it's actually called the United States Census, where you have to now self-identify as an undocumented immigrant, which means we're not going to be able to count all the people, and we're not going to be able to get all the support that we need.
Yeah.
That's hugely xenophobic. All right. Thank you so much for that report. Jordan,
Thank you.
What is the deal with Cowman? What's going on?
Yes, Cowman.
With your boyfriend.
So, just a reminder for anyone that is unaware or doesn't remember, Cowman is his name. I guess it's not his name. Cowfucker is what we said. People are calling it because he's from the 22nd District, which is Central Valley of California. It is extremely farmer-centric, and I'll go into that fun tidbit about farmers signing or putting forth a petition. I'll close out with that because it's just really funny. That's related to his cowness.
I would be pissed if I was a farmer too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, you're gonna get into it. It's so funny.
Yeah. So first Nunes update. Also, thank you for not referring to him as my boyfriend, AG. I really appreciate that.
I did, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Earlier in the episode.
Oh, no!
Yeah, and I did say, what's the deal with your boyfriend? And then I was going to ask you how he's been.
Oh, you're starting to tune it out. You're suppressing
He
it.
hasn't been returning my texts. I don't know.
But I did say, well, have you been texting him on WhatsApp? No.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
I
how
need to
you
go
get 'em.
encrypted.
Their
Yeah.
private
What a
email
fool
server.
I am.
Yeah.
But I did put here in my notes that you should get to pick a new boyfriend when Nunes loses his job in November.
Oh, thank you.
'Cause
I will happily take Andrew Jans as my
I
boyfriend.
think Andrew Jans is going to kick his
Ooh.
ass.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Can I get a new boyfriend when he's in jail? Like, can I switch out?
No.
Oh, okay.
You're Brody.
Stuck with Brody, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, God.
I know, that's rough.
No, but yeah. I think once we find out he didn't pay for that abortion, that's when.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what we're waiting for.
For context, listeners, Julissa and I have made comments that express some sort of fondness about these people, so they've been damned as our boyfriends.
I don't even know what I
was
said about Brady.
looks. It was, I said
I think
that
you guys
Devin
have been
Nunes.
damned, actually, by this. But yeah, this was like many episodes ago.
Yeah, we gotta go back.
It's a tease.
It is just a tease.
They're not
Okay.
really boyfriends.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fuck that guy so hard. But not because he's not my boyfriend.
I thought you said I fucked that guy so hard. I was like, oh God,
Oh,
Jordan,
man.
you're not making my job any harder for teasing you about
Case
this.
is not made without.
All right, so update on my boyfriend. He this week, you may have heard this reported on Mad Out, but there's an audio recording that someone got. It was obtained from a member of a progressive group who attended a fundraiser for GOP Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers of Washington State. And Nunes was talking to somebody about the Mueller investigation, and essentially what he winds up doing is a couple things in this recorded memo. The first one is, quote unquote, he says, if Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones, we being the GOP, obviously, which is the real danger. We have to keep all these seats. We have to keep the majority. If we do not keep the majority, all of this goes away. So this is basically a straight up declaration that the goal in the midterms this year will be to maintain the House so that they can further protect Trump from being investigated, and this investigation from continuing. And what are you going to say, AJ?
I was going to say, you know what's hilarious is that the defense for this, some of the talking heads that still support Trump are saying, he didn't say protect, anything, or he didn't say we have to, do this. He basically, it's in the beginning of his statement, he says, read the statement again, and we'll go piece by piece.
Yep. He says, if Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones.
So that right there establishes
They have to clear the president
that
for them.
what his point is in this particular statement is that it is up to them to clear the president.
Yes.
And so anyone saying, they didn't say they have to clear the president. They didn't say it was his job to protect the president. The word protect isn't in there.
Critical thinking is supposed to be a skill they have, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take that second part of the statement out and keep it by itself so that it doesn't sound like, that's what they wanted.
They
that's
think
what
we're
the goal
idiots.
is. But basic reading comprehension, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously Nunes has been a true patriot, quote unquote, as Trump has called him, in that he's been. I think Rohrabacher deserves more credit in terms of supporting Trump and Russia, because Nunes is just the face of it. Although he did have the memo, as you all remember, which basically. This is the thing, too. It's not even that the GOP in general is trying to stop the investigation into Trump and the, revelations of the effect that Russia and possible Trump-Russia collusion has had on the U.S. It's that like the Senate Republicans have supported the intelligence community. It's the House Republicans, the chair that Devin Nunes holds. They're the ones that are just so obsessive about denying facts and just completely gaslighting everything.
Right, and this tape definitely explains why. For people that weren't aware before, maybe didn't listen to Mueller, she wrote, they wouldn't have made that connection until now. It makes perfect sense now why he was doing all those weird things. Maybe before they were like, oh, he's probably just trying to be, the Donald's advocate and just, defend a guy that no one else is looking out for just for the sake of, I don't know, fairness or whatever. But now it's obvious that with the clearing him of what? Why does he need to be cleared?
You're right. And now that he's made this statement, like you said, Jaleesa, that you go back and think about his behavior with that goal in mind. Think of that as his mission statement. If Sessions won't unrecuse, it's up to us.
Right.
That is behind the motives of all of the creepy, crazy conspiracy shit that he's been doing in Congress. It's so obvious to me. I don't understand. It must be Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that is not the only thing he said that was so damning, actually, on that recording. Another thing that he talks about, which is very, very interesting, I don't think we've really talked about this in these exact words, is he suggests that in regards to impeaching Rosenstein, the reason why GOP is not supporting it right now is because they know they need they need the Senate to be focusing on Kavanaugh and getting Kavanaugh through. So he's saying that they need to prioritize Kavanaugh getting through right now and then keep the House, and then every GOP member is going to be supporting impeaching Rosenstein.
Totally.
And that, I think, could be a legitimate game plan, especially on behalf of the House GOP. I'm hoping that the Senate GOP keeps consistent because I think that their loyalty to the IC extends past Kavanaugh. I don't think, I think that them refusing, Jim Jordan's pitiful attempt at introducing articles of impeachment against Rosenstein, I believe that GOP legitimately shut that down because they shut it down, not because they're postponing it.
I think it's BS. Otherwise, Paul Ryan would have said, this is a viable thing, let's park it and we'll talk about it after we confirm Kavanaugh. But that's not what he said. He was like, y'all nuts, this is stupid, we're not doing this shit.
So you don't think Paul Ryan is on board with
he's
that?
Not on board.
I think
he said
he's spineless and waiting to get out.
He just wants to leave. But if he were sticking around, I think Nunes is trying to stick around is the idea.
Most Republicans were not on board with the impeachment of Rosenstein.
Really?
Of course.
And not for this reason, you don't think?
Oh, no, that's full on lie.
So he's on his own. Nunes is kind of on his own, and this is what you're saying.
I mean, the House Intelligence, the Republicans of the House Intelligence Committee.
But Nunes was there with this woman behind this fundraiser, not thinking there was no press allowed in, thinking it would never get out, and somebody was like, what are you going to do with that impeachment of Rosenstein? He's like, we want to, but we have to wait because we have to focus on Kavanaugh. You guys want Kavanaugh, right? And that's just an absolute giant pile of bullshit.
Right, and by we he just means a handful of House people. Got it.
Him, Meadows, Jordan, the little group of 6 or whatever.
I'm not saying it's not possible that if, down the line they see that as the most viable option in keeping power, that they're willing to go after Rosenstein. I do not put that past the GOP.
Right.
I do not think that they will do that, though.
Got it.
Yeah, agreed. I think that they introduced it to see what it would be like. It was pretty fringe, and everyone was like, no.
Yeah,
okay.
Like
it is crazy, but they are kind of crazy
your
to
own
me.
grave in the most
desperation and desperate times.
Yeah, it's awful.
I think it's like a Hail Mary. This whole plan is a Hail Mary.
Yes, and I love how quickly it failed. It was so satisfying. Jim Jordan.
Just like that Nunes memo, which, by the way, says that the FISA warrant was not based on the Steele dossier, just so you know.
Yep. Yeah, there's like multiple things that came before.
Not that he read it or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I didn't read, sorry. My name is Devin Nunes. Okay, so continuing on with Devin Nunes and his re-election, going into what we were referencing before, the cow fucking allegation, which again is just like it's a deep state term for him. But basically it's this idea that Nunes goes around in his district that is filled with farmers and tries to say that he's a friend of the farmers. He has all these
grew
ties.
Up as a farmer. He's a farmer. I'm a farmer.
Exactly, and he's constantly saying it. And the farmers, who, by the way, are largely like GOP members, they're not progressive people. They're sick of him misrepresenting himself as a friend to farmers or someone that even farms.
And when we say they're not progressive people, we mean like socially, social democratic, progressive.
Yeah.
Yes,
they're not liberal.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We're not using the word progressive to, we're not saying like those aren't
Right.
progressive people. Like, no, the farming in California is some of the most high tech, incredible stuff that goes on. They feed the world basically.
Yeah.
And just like you said, they're tired of his shit. They're tired of him coming up in his $500 shoes saying he's a farmer, and they're like, no, you're not, man, and don't insult farmers that way.
Yes.
Right.
Also, though, quite literally, they this story reports that they voted for Trump, so they're not Democratic. The people that are bringing this, they're not Democrats.
Exactly. Yeah.
The effort to so sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. So
okay.
Basically, someone submitted a petition to the Sacramento Superior Court to make Devin Nunes stop calling himself a farmer on the ballot. The petition was filed on behalf.
He has it on the ballot?
That's what they're trying to do.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's an initiative that's funded by a Democratic PAC, but they got people that voted for Trump and are like not, like I said, they're not super progressive people, to be the face of this, because they're the ones that are actually affected by Nunes lying and not supporting them and not being for them in the way he says he is.
Exactly.
And how he should be, because his whole representative, like his whole district is fucking so tied to the farming industry.
And a lot of them are probably not pro-Trump anymore because of the tariffs that are weakening the markets where they can sell things like soybeans and almonds and all of the things that they grow here in California. We're one of the biggest agriculture producers in the world, and that is an important job, and to be toyed with like that, I would be pissed too.
Exactly.
Like, you're taking away my markets and you're calling yourself a farmer, and you haven't been in decades, so please don't put farmer on the ballot to confuse people or to falsify information. It's like a lie.
Exactly. So 3 people in the district: Paul Buxman, he's a Danuba stone fruit farmer, as well as Daniel O'Connell and Hope Nisley. They are advocating that he be mandated to stop calling himself a farmer. It's hilarious. O'Connell is an active advocate for local farmers and is the executive director of the Central Valley Partnership. His Facebook account lists his occupation as an ecosystem services consultant for the University of California Systems Agriculture and Natural Resources Department. So this is a very, very, very smart dude, very involved in the farming community and all of their science.
Nice.
He doesn't, quote, "I don't believe Nunes has had any income from farming for at least 10 years. He has some interest in a few wineries, but he's distanced himself from those and says he has no
different.
Yeah, it's very different. And so, I don't see any cows and farmeries.
It's like Trump saying, I
farmeries.
have wineries in Charlottesville.
Yeah. And he says that Devin has no involvement in their day-to-day management, even if you were to count a winery as farming. So again, when this comes out, people are saying these are deep state farmers, and really you're wrong, because Buxman, he's a stone fruit farmer. He says that he used to be a Devin Nunes supporter, which is crazy to me. And he's just tired of Devin Nunes calling himself a farmer when he is not. Because his well's gone dry, for example, like his literal well. So his water source has gone dry. He's lost orchards due to lack of water. His neighbors' workers have been targeted in ICE audits, and the recent rush of tariffs have ruined the markets for his crops.
Yeah, it's the whole, I think it's coming down to now where finally people who voted for Trump are actually feeling the negative impact of doing so. With tariffs, with immigration, they're losing their workers. And they're finding out now that they indeed were voting against their best interests. The tax cuts didn't come through. Nunes, he's never in his district. He's always in D.C. or in New York or whatever. And they don't feel represented, and I don't blame them. And we're really pulling for Andrew up there.
Definitely, yeah. And also, I'm going to live fact check myself. I cannot confirm that he voted for Trump, so don't take that to heart.
Okay.
Just that he was a Devin Nunes supporter.
Oh, the stone fruit guy?
Yeah, stone fruit guy. But they're supposed to get resolution on that proposed ballot measure, I guess, on August 30th. So we'll do an update just for funsies.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the cowfucker thing comes from them just saying that he's basically screwing over farmers. So the more aggressive people are labeling him as a cowfucker.
Way funnier than what I thought.
Yeah, no actual allegations of bestiality here, as
that
much
wouldn't
as
be
that
fair to
be
the cows
beneficial
that
to our
we do not
campaign.
condone
any
in
part of
abuse
that
in any shape or form. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan.
And like I said, you should get a new boyfriend when he loses.
Yeah,
you know, I would love to as soon as I'm released from my past comments.
Released. All right, you guys, are you ready for Mananigans?
Yeah.
Phenomena. Phenomena. Phenomena.
All right, guys, the Manafort trial was lit AF this week, and I'd like to go over it in our new segment, Mananigans. That's Manafort Shenanigans. This segment will be around for as long as Manafort is on trial, so who knows? That could be a while. This one actually is wrapping up, but there's another one.
Yeah.
There's always going to be, I think, another trial.
Dude, we could follow him in prison, put a webcam. That seems invasive, but if he agreed.
Look at the Manafort in his natural environment.
Dude,
Jail.
Yes, get David Attenborough to just narrate in Manafort.
Or the honey badger guy. Paul Manafort don't give a shit.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great.
Paul Manafort don't care. All right, so day 5 of the trial was Monday. Rick Gates was on the stand, and Monday he told the court he and Manafort committed bank and tax fraud. But the stunner was that he admitted he had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from Manafort by filing false expense reports. He embezzled, and it was funny because he wouldn't say the word embezzling, and the I think that actually came later in the cross-examination. But they're like, "So you embezzled?" He's like, "I falsified expense reports." "So you embezzled?" He's like, "I falsified expense reports." "You don't want to say it?" I'm like, he goes, "Why does it matter?" And then he turns around to the jury and goes, "I embezzled money from Paul Manafort." It was just hilarious.
The jury likes him more now.
And I want to be clear, first of all, this guy is a criminal and an asshole, and
Gates,
yes, he's a terrible human being. He's garbage, and but that's just funny to me.
It is funny.
It is.
I embezzled money.
Yeah. If anyone flips, they automatically go up a little bit of a notch in my book.
Yeah, just a peg or two.
Yeah. Still shitty.
He is cooperating with the government, so
yeah, exactly.
I guess that's a silver lining, but for his terrible, terrible existence. Anyway, it makes sense, though, that this would come from prosecution because it takes it away from the defense in case they wanted to use it to paint Gates as a shitty guy, which is was going to end up being their whole defense. But he does go to jail for 100 years if he lies on the stand, so that's probably not likely. Then there were spats between Ellis and the prosecution again when Ellis read them the Riot Act for unnecessary questioning about the motivations of billionaires. Then they had a pretty heated argument for about 10 minutes with Ellis criticizing Andres, the guy, one of the prosecutors, for not making eye contact and rolling his eyes. "Look at me." He also banned the use of the word oligarch and had a back and forth with Andreas about that, all in front of the jury. Then late in the day, another big argument happened between Ellis and the prosecution about the pace of the trial. Ellis kept telling Andres to get to it, and Andres replied, "We're at the heart of the matter," and Ellis just yelled, "Just listen to me." And as the Gates testimony continued, Ellis would continue urging Andres to hurry it up, continually interrupting, saying, "Next question." And he would be, "Okay, next question." And he would just do that. Seems like a
dick.
He seems fun.
Might talk about what I'm going to say.
Yeah, put a pin in it, bring it back. They also called a Treasury employee to the stand Monday who testified that Manafort and Gates did not report their foreign bank accounts. And we learned that Manafort made over $60 million working in the Ukraine, which we learned from the testimony of Cindy Laporta, which started Friday but continued into Monday morning. She talked about how Manafort avoided paying taxes by using shell accounts in Cyprus and creating loans and then forgiving them. And incidentally, remember that one time in Manafort's notes from the Trump Tower meeting where he said, "Use Cyprus as inter"? That now says to me, and this is conjecture, but I'm right, that they actually discussed paying Russia for hacked materials in that meeting, and they were going to use one of Manafort's shell companies or shell bank accounts, one of his dozens of Cypriot accounts, as an intermediary to pay the Russians. So look for that. Look for that in upcoming superseding indictments on Manafort for crimes of collusion, as outlined by the Rosenstein Scope Memo.
Put some beans on it.
And be sure to check out episode 23 for the information on that Rosenstein Memo. We go over it in pretty good detail in episode 23. Day 6 of the trial, Tuesday, Rick Gates was cross-examined by the defense, but the big surprise was the defense repeated questioning about Gates' extramarital affair. And he used a lot of that embezzled money to pay for that affair, including renting her a flat in London and stuff like that. So what a toad.
What a toad.
Day 7, more Rick Gates. And the big story on day 7 is that right at the end, one of the defense lawyers hinted that Gates had had 4 affairs, saying, "Did you tell the special counsel yet that you actually engaged in 4 extramarital affairs?" To which the prosecution immediately objected. The defense here was trying to show that Rick Gates wasn't being truthful in his testimony, but the prosecution objected immediately. There was a long sidebar up at the bench, and they put this white noise machine on so the jury can't hear him talking. And that has been put under seal because apparently it contains info about, quote, ongoing and open investigations, in indicating that Gates is still working with special counsel, to me at least. This is clear evidence that maybe he slept with Butina or Ribka, but it's somehow tied to crimes of collusion. So one of his additional extramarital affairs has to do with future superseding indictments for crimes of collusion, and I wonder who it is.
Yeah, wow, them bringing that up, they thought it was going to help their case. Little to know, it's going to come back and probably be a nightmare for them.
What if it's a Brody-related thing, too? Because could it have involved...
You think he had sex with Brody?
Well, I mean, that too, now that you're mentioning it. It's kind of a,
He had an extramarital... Yeah, I shouldn't limit to binary gender norms. I shouldn't. It could be anyone.
Sorry. I can't believe that attorneys at that high of a level, defense attorneys, are doing that tactic where they bring up things that are supposed to just divulge, deficiencies in their character that are completely irrelevant to the actual investigation. Like, they should know better that that's going to get shut down immediately.
Well, and it's also a common thing, though. Even if it gets shut down immediately, the jury can't unhear it.
Right.
They always say you can't unring the bell. And that's something lawyers have been doing, defense lawyers have been doing, especially when you don't have a case.
Yeah.
Forever. They're like, oh, what about your penis being small? Withdrawn. The jury will strike that from the cop. Oh, yeah, okay, well, now we know he has a small dick.
It's so, they do that to victims of sexual assault, too, and stuff. Like, they'll try to get them all caught up in details that don't match up perfectly after they separate their time on the bench by months at a time. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, that's just sometimes, that's... Ugh, it's gross. Now, of course, on day 7, the judge continued giving an extraordinarily hard time to the prosecution about hurrying it along. He berated them when he learned one of their witnesses, an IRS agent, had been watching the whole trial from the gallery, even though Ellis had allowed him to stay. And they had to force Ellis to go back to the transcripts to prove to him that he said the guy could stay. And then Ellis goes, I don't care what the transcript said. Maybe I made a mistake. Don't do it again.
What a baby.
Yeah.
Dude.
Grumpy old man.
Fucking send him Gerbers.
But doesn't he also treat people like crap when he thinks they have a shot at winning? Just not necessarily intentionally, but just it's a coincidence. It's almost like he subconsciously is tougher on people that he thinks.
I don't think it's subconscious.
You think it's conscious?
Yeah, and I think I will get into that because you're right. Sometimes in order to make sure that the appeals process, they can't poke any holes in the case by being unduly difficult on the prosecution because you think they're going to win. It's kind of like how Mueller is doing his due diligence with this back and forth with Giuliani to make sure that if he does a subpoena, nobody can shoot it down for him not doing everything that he could.
Totally.
So Ellis doesn't ever want anybody to come back and question his judgment or his ruling or the outcome in a courtroom. And it helps prevent hung juries, and it does all this other stuff. But it's also just a kind of a dick.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So day 8, Thursday, the trial started with an apology from Ellis, saying he was wrong to criticize prosecutors in front of the jury, and he told the jury to not allow that to sway them in any way. So that was nice. Also on day 8...
shitty judge.
He's just kind of a grumpy old man. Also day 8, 2 different banks testified that Manafort faked his profit and loss sheets. We reported on this. Do you remember when we talked about how he asked Gates... He got his profit and loss statement in a PDF document, and he asked Gates if he could transfer it into a Word document. And then the formatting got all fucked up, and they tried to change the profits, and it looked obviously stupid and completely doctored. It was like bad Photoshop. It was almost like that Donald Trump Jr. Photoshop where he made Trump's approval rating go from 40 to 50, and it's so bad. Like, stop. If you're a Republican, stop trying to do Photoshop. And stop trying to amend PDFs. You suck at it. Hire someone. But, you probably don't want to do that because we would testify against you. It's just hilarious to me to watch them try to do technology. It's so funny. It makes me feel so much better about myself.
This is the son of the man that called in and falsified another person saying what a great man he was.
Anyway, these banks, so they got these profit and loss statements, changed their profit, like added $3.4 million. And the banks said, they testified, they would not have lent Manafort any of the money if they had known that, if they had seen their real profit and loss statement. And then we also learned from the Airbnb guy that Manafort listed his Soho condo as a second home, saying he lived there full time, which saves you a shitload in taxes when actually he was renting it out on Airbnb and not paying those taxes. But then a second sidebar happened that was put under seal. And in a filing Thursday, Mueller's team said that it wanted to keep that sidebar under seal because it related to an open and ongoing investigation. When the defense asked Gates, quote, "Were you interviewed on several occasions about your time at the Trump campaign?" unquote, the prosecution objected before Gates could answer, and they had a sidebar. And right after, Ellis called for a break, during which the prosecution discussed, quote, ongoing criminal investigation into Russia meddling and possible coordination with the Trump campaign, unquote.
Yes.
They said, quote, disclosing the identified transcript portions would reveal substantive evidence pertaining to an ongoing investigation. In addition, sealing will minimize any risk of prejudice for future trials from the disclosure of new information relating to that ongoing investigation. That, to me, says that indicates they're planning on having a future trial and a future jury for these future indictments. And also, he quoted saying the government's concern would continue until the relevant aspect of the investigation is revealed publicly. So it's coming out.
Hell yeah.
I think that's blatantly clear evidence that superseding indictments for crimes of collusion are coming, which we've been saying. So we're going to need some bigger beans. And then came Friday. Friday was weird. The judge granted the request from special counsel to keep that secret conversation sealed. But then something weirder happened. The trial was held up for several hours after another bench discussion about the Mueller filing, criticizing Ellis and requesting he tell the jury to ignore one of his comments in order to prevent them from misunderstanding the gravity of the testimony presented to them. When the prosecution was asking about a $5.5 million construction loan that Manafort applied for but did not get, Ellis said, quote, "You may want to spend time on loans that were granted," unquote. And the prosecution said that statement misrepresents the law regarding bank fraud conspiracy and improperly conveys the court's opinion of the facts. You don't actually have to get the loan to break the law.
It's like attempted murder is a charge still.
Yeah, and so he said, the Mueller's team said that could likely confuse and mislead the jury. And this sparked speculation that there could be a plea deal because they had all this sidebar and they took 5 hours. But honestly, I think it was just the judge telling the jury to ignore what he said. He marched them in later and reminded them to keep an open mind and that Manafort's innocent until proven guilty, seemingly in addition to something else he may have told them behind closed doors, because he did go into the jury room for a long time. And then after he went to the jury room after they had that bench discussion, which is sealed now, and he was in there for a while, and then he let him go earlier for lunch. So I don't think there was any flipping. But, we're going to talk to Joyce Vance about that in a minute, too. And Day 9 was also the part where Manafort got $16 million in loans from Koch, who was promised a job as Secretary of the Army, but apparently was also promised, like, Secretary of Treasury and the HUD Secretary, which is what Ben Carson got. We learned that the two loan officers who were given use immunity for this trial said that they felt uncomfortable about Koch wanting to lend Manafort money so badly.
I didn't have the money. And I thought to myself, join the Army. It's free.
So they were totally cock blocking. Also on Day 9, which is Friday, BT dubs, prosecutors filed a motion asking Ellis to revisit another comment he made in front of the jury, and the prosecution says it will likely rest its case on Monday. So I found that fascinating about all these sealed sidebars. I found it really interesting. There's 3 big ones, and so I felt compelled that I wanted to talk to an expert. Joining us today is one of my favorite MSNBC contributors. She's a law professor at the University of Alabama and previously served as the U.S. Attorney in Birmingham under Obama. Please welcome Joyce Vance. Joyce, thank you for agreeing to appear on Mueller, She Wrote.
Glad to be with you.
Well, I'm very honored. Your insights on MSNBC are always succinct and educational, so I wanted to bring you on today to talk about the sealed sidebar conversations that have been going on in the Manafort trial this week. So can you explain what those are and maybe why they wanted them under seal?
It's very interesting. This looks mysterious and maybe even devious to folks who haven't spent a lot of time trying cases in a courtroom. But really, when you're trying a case, these sort of things happen a good bit. And the reason for that is juries should only hear evidence that's properly admissible in a case. And so judges will speak privately with lawyers to determine sometimes what that evidence is if there are any other issues in the trial, and to make sure that at the end of the trial, the jury has only heard properly admissible evidence so that whatever the result of the trial is, it can be affirmed on appeal. So I think it's important to put aside the fears that some people seem to have that there's mischief afoot here. That said, though, these sidebars have been pretty interesting. I think the most important one came during the cross-examination of Gates, the government's star cooperating witness in this case, when he was asked by the defense on cross-examination about some of his conversations with the government. And the government objected, and proceedings followed 6 pages of conversation between lawyers and the judge that are now sealed, which means we can't see them, at least for now. But what emerged is a clearer picture of Gates's value to the government. And so this notion that although he's cooperating in the Manafort case, there are also other ongoing investigations that he's playing a role in. I think we've suspected that all along. Gates's plea agreement holds out hope that he will in fact not serve any jail time if his cooperation with the government is fruitful. And so that tells us that he had something very valuable to offer the government. The government was willing to indict Manafort without Gates's assistance. When they filed that indictment, they didn't know that Gates would cooperate. He was a named co-defendant. So that tells us that although he has value in the Manafort prosecution, the primary value he has to the government is probably in other areas. And we can speculate about what those might be if you want to.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's a really good insight because, I mean, we've been speculating for a while now that there's probably, especially since that 4-page redacted Rosenstein memo came out about the scope, and it said Manafort was able to be investigated for crimes of collusion, whatever those might be. I understand there's several that could be in there. But these little sidebars, particularly the one you mentioned, kind of indicate that there are open and ongoing investigations, potentially with Manafort, or even just as Gates he continued, I believe, to be part of Trump's campaign after Manafort left. So I think that's a really interesting indicator. And then, of course, we also had the sidebar where the defense took that parting shot about 4 women, extramarital affairs, and then they had their little sidebar and put that under seal as well. So it's all very interesting.
It is, and the defense's strategy is to dirty up the government's cooperator and convince the jury that they shouldn't credit any of his testimony. Of course, he was the person that Manafort chose to be the government's star witness, in effect. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out with the jury.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm also with you that I think that the delay that happened on day 9 was I think it was several hours, but the timing seems to be the government, the prosecutors filed their motion about curing something with the jury. The judge went into that jury room for quite a while, and apparently it got fixed. And he came back out, brought the jury out, did roll call, and let them go early to lunch, and then they picked up right after lunch. So I kind of don't see anything going on there besides a curative situation with the jury as well.
Yeah, it's tough to know. There was a lot of speculation that perhaps a juror had been exposed to some outside information, which of course juries shouldn't have happen during a trial, and that the judge painstakingly may have spoken with the juror and with the lawyers in order to make sure that that juror could continue to fairly deliberate. These things happen, not frequently, but Judge Ellis has been thorough about maintaining the integrity of this trial, and that action would seem to be in keeping with his general approach.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that some of the other speculations that were coming out about there being some sort of a flipping or some sort of a Manafort deciding to cooperate, I don't know that there was time in there in those discussions for that kind of situation.
Right. I saw that speculation. Sometimes a defendant won't actually decide to plead until he realizes that the evidence is in and that he is inevitably going to be convicted. But Manafort certainly knew that walking into this trial and is willing to roll the bones for better or for worse.
Yeah, correct. And he has a whole other trial coming up in September. So there's always...
Right. Round 2 on slightly different charges. And it's worth pointing out that Manafort had the option. The government gave him the option of just doing it in one indictment. And he insisted that they indict him on these other charges in Alexandria where there was venue. That meant the location that was correct for the government to bring charges. He could have waived that and dealt with this in the course of one trial, but he apparently wanted to have two.
Yeah. And okay, so here's something that I had mentioned earlier in the show that kind of confused me, and it's about the Andrew Miller subpoena, and they've been trying to get him in for months now, and he's been working through that. But then apparently he held himself in contempt of court so he could appeal it. I'm not quite sure I understand that move. Can you explain that to me?
This is very interesting, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on here because the judge sealed these proceedings, and yet the lawyers came out of court and talked about it, and they indicated that they wanted their client to be held in contempt so that they could tee up for appeal the issue of whether or not Mueller has proper jurisdiction as special counsel. You know, this argument we've seen before, Mueller was illegitimately appointed, therefore his indictment of Paul Manafort should be dismissed. They lost in the district court. Now they're trying to get that up on appeal. But typically when a court seals its proceedings, you don't see the lawyers walk out and talk about them. So I'll be interested to see if the judge has any comment on what happened after her hearing concluded.
Yeah, that will be interesting to to hear about. And then one final weird question that I saw on Twitter this week, that apparently the DNC is suing the Russian Federation. We knew that from maybe a couple weeks ago when they were trying to serve Kushner in that case. But they apparently process served WikiLeaks via Twitter. Is that, how much legal weight does a Twitter serve hold?
So this is absolutely a brilliant strategy. In the DNC lawsuit, of course, there will be some legal proceedings, I'm certain, to determine whether or not service by Twitter is now a good form of service. But WikiLeaks is notoriously unavailable for service of process in legal proceedings. And the DNC, which is helmed by my former DOJ colleague, Tom Perez, who is the Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division, and a very fine lawyer and tactician, apparently came up with this strategy of serving WikiLeaks on Twitter, where WikiLeaks is present. And they went to the judge, and the judge authorized this service. And so yesterday, we saw this really interesting tweet from a process serving firm announcing that they were serving Twitter in this very public venue. I haven't seen that before. Perhaps it has happened and I'm just not aware of it, but definitely worth watching. This could become a very interesting way of serving entities that are present on Twitter but that don't have a physical office where they can be served.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. They could set a precedent.
It really could. This could be a very interesting, very important development and perhaps an unforeseen consequence to some of these folks of using Twitter.
Yeah, I was pretty taken aback by that. So I'm sure it'll go through the courts and it'll probably be appealed and all that. But you know, who knows how it's going to shake out. The judge did approve it, like you said. So, and again, I think one of the points of process serving, at least after looking at what happened with Kushner, is your due diligence. You try every single way that you possibly can and exhaust all of your options. And I think that they just found a creative way to add another option to kind of solidify the whole thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it's going to be very interesting because you mentioned, and I think rightly so, that this gets worked out on appeal. America is getting this sort of law school education as a result of the Trump administration. And so far, we've been involved in criminal investigations and trials. And now it looks like America is about to learn about the appellate process. So that's great from my point of view because I'm an appellate lawyer and think that that's an important part of the process. But really, many of these issues are decided only preliminarily in front of a district judge, a trial judge. And then they move on to one of the 11 circuit courts of appeals in the United States or some of the specialty appellate courts for a decision by a panel of judges. So this great adventure that our country is on together to explore its legal system is about to enter a new stage.
Yeah. And I'm so honored that you were able to join us today. You've clarified a lot of things for me. Everyone, you can follow Joyce on Twitter at Joyce White Vance and always listen to her when she talks on MSNBC. She knows her stuff. So thank you so much for joining us today.
That's so nice of you. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and it's an honor to get to join you.
Oh, wow, that's so great to hear. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great.
All right, we'll be right back. Thanks for listening to Mueller, She Wrote. The she in Mueller, She Wrote is no accident. Did you know we are 100% women-owned and operated? Every single person that helps make this podcast possible identifies as a woman. Our creative and web design, our engineer and producers, our editors and digital media manager, our agent, our ad execs, our merchandising manager, and even the postal service clerk that helps me with shipping in our P.O. box. All women and all LGBTQ+ allies. We will continue to employ and partner with women as our podcast grows, but we could use your help. Please support women in podcasting by visiting MuellerSheWrote.com and become a patron today. You all ready for the Fantasy Indictment League?
Yes.
All right. Well, before we get into this, you had put a pin in something when we were talking about the Manafort trial. What was it you wanted to say, Jordan?
Yes. Thank you. Just another thing of Ellis being a baby. He had apparently at one point, I forget which prosecutor it was exactly, but he started berating a prosecutor and said that he's like, I understand you're upset, but you have tears in your eyes right now. I can see them. I can see you have tears. And he was like, I don't have tears in my eyes, Judge. Can you please
I'm
not
allergic
say
to
that?
assholes. That's what's going on.
Yeah, I just thought that's incredibly unprofessional. That's ridiculous.
All in front of the jury.
Exactly.
It's just interesting, and I really hope it doesn't affect it in any way.
And it's like, if you're trying to, like you said before, I think that's very true, that he's trying to, make this super sealed tight in the event of appeals. But tears in your eyes, that has nothing to do with what's going to come up in appeals. That's not helping anybody.
Maybe he knows the jury will sympathize to that, because the average person would be like, hey, this judge is really mean, so maybe we'll consider that.
Yeah, maybe just focus on your job first before doing all this.
It's a lot of games, it seems like.
I don't think it's games. I think he's just an asshole.
Yeah.
And we've heard this from multitudes of prosecutors who've tried cases in his courts. He's just a jerk. He's just an angry, bitter old man. And I mean, maybe he's a very happy guy and he gets it all out at work, I don't know. Maybe that's like his kickboxing. I really don't know what the situation is, but I don't know him very well, but what I do know is the mountains and mountains of evidence in this case are heavily weighed against Manafort, and I'd like to think that none of this a-holery on display by Ellis is going to have any effect on the fact that there are stacks and stacks of documents and proof and that tax fraud and all this stuff took place.
Yeah.
I think he'll be found guilty on 10 counts. So
totally.
All right. Anyway, back to Fantasy Indictment League. Let's see. With the clue for me this week in the Mueller subpoena that Credico is not going to testify until September, I'm taking Stone and Assange off my list this week, because you can't get Stone without Credico's his testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can, but I don't think he will. He's kind of a tie up all the loose ends sort of fellow. So I'm taking Stone and Assange off my list, and I'm going with Donald Trump Jr., though now I think there won't be any conspiracy indictments, at least until September. But I want to put Donald Trump Jr. and Kushner on there. And it's Kushner because Julie says, you and I talked about earlier, that he could be indicted on all these financial crimes aside from a conspiracy, and that could come out prior to then.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Trump Jr., just because that brings me joy. So Kushner Jr., I need the high point value too. Cohen, but he'll be indicted in the Southern District of New York, but that counts. These don't have to be indicted in the Mueller investigation. It's as long as he's wrapped up or referred by. And I think Butina could get another superseding indictment. Those count, by the way, superseding indictments. And then one rando Russian that I've never heard of. So put me down for that.
Okay.
Rando Russian, Butina, Cohen, Kush, Jr. Those are my 5. What about you guys?
Nice. Yeah, mine are the same. It's just like a little emphasis on Kushner. Because, with the Manafort financial stuff, following the money, you're right. I think that would be something that could come way before the collusion stuff, because collusion will probably be an afterthought for a lot of people after they see all the money. It might be easier to just have the case after they make those connections.
Yeah, I don't know. But, the stuff that he could have, stuff that Mueller could have on him in conspiracy could be...
I mean, I think it could be plentiful. Yeah, but the money stuff is just like, it's right here.
It's easy.
It's just like right
here. It's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the Russian indictments and
totally.
The Manafort indictments, the Gates indictments. It's low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What are our superseding indictments points? Are those separately?
It depends on who it is.
Got it. Okay.
But an indictment and a superseding indictment are the same value point
got it.
depending on the person.
Okay, then I for sure am adding Butina because I think you're totally right about that. Stone, if he continues to refuse to respond to a subpoena, I don't know. Maybe would it just go straight to indictment?
I think he really wants to get that Credico testimony, though. I think he really needs it. He wouldn't be going after it so hard if he... I mean, they've tried to get him in like 4 times or something, and he's been refusing.
Yeah.
Now he's put himself in contempt. Or was that Mueller? That was Mueller. My bad.
Yeah, Miller.
But they're all Stone people.
Yes, yeah. And then, the Manhattan Madam who has gone in now. Their whole ring of criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep Stone on there. Just because fuck that guy.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. DTJ, for sure. Really hoping. Kushner, goddamn, why is it taking so long? Come on.
Yeah, that's the question. Why did it take so long to take his security clearance, man?
Yeah.
This guy.
No, I mean, I think it's probably just indicative of how close he is to Trump, so that's actually probably good.
True.
So let me
cover that.
Clarify. Credico is testifying September 7th. Miller is the guy who held himself in contempt and is refusing to testify.
Okay.
Okay,
so,
I remember us reporting on that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Which is because he doesn't even seem... He's a big fish in that he knows a lot, I guess, but yeah, I don't...
He was a scheduler. So Stone's scheduler. So he would have known all the meetings when they happened. And that is some probably corroborating testimony that Mueller really wants before he, throws the cuffs on Stone.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree with you. Miller would not be indicted. So taking him off your indictment list is what you did, right? Or did you ever have him on your indictment league?
Oh, he's on there.
Okay.
I just mean...
Oh, I thought you were taking him off.
I'm taking Stone and Assange off because I don't think that... because Miller is delayed because he's holding himself in contempt of court, and Credico is delayed. He's not testifying until September 7th. And I don't think that Mueller will... And Stone's the target in that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's going to get Stone until he wraps up the investigation with those two.
So there's a few more weeks,
and I don't think
probably.
he can indict those two until after he interviews them either.
Okay, got it. I get it. So you're just tailoring your league to like this week.
Yep, it's this week. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I feel like Jarrett, man, I can't wait any minute now. I stand by it.
Yeah.
Butina, though, she's a good, she's arrested, but like, what if they get her for then if it's not an
lying and conspiracy?
Okay.
Those are her 2 indictments so
far.
There
we go. Okay. Yeah. So more indictments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, on this week of Jordan doesn't understand how fantasy football works.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I
wonder if people bet on our picks and then it's like fantasy indictment.
Ooh, that's meta.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna do DTJ, Kushner, Butina. I don't think Assange is going down this week or Stone. I totally agree with that. Miller, that'd be great. Who fucking holds himself in contempt of court? What? I've never heard of that.
Apparently it's to file an appeal. That's what Joyce was saying, and she didn't get it either. She was like, I don't know where he's going with that. Something how he wants to appeal his own thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I have one more question. Mueller's trying to wrap up in the next few weeks, you think, right?
I don't know.
Not even like a theory. Like, I think we were talking about it earlier.
I think he'll wrap up when he's done.
Yeah, so like it probably would go past the midterms. You're thinking.
I don't know. I don't know what Mueller thinks is the date he has to stop dropping. He's not going to stop investigating during midterms, but he's not going to drop any indictments in a window around the election, and I don't know what his window is.
Even if people are saying like it'll interfere with the election if you do it, you don't think he'll care about that? Like he'll just go with whatever.
No, I'm saying he's not going to drop any indictments.
Oh, okay.
And maybe it's September 1st to the day after the election.
Oh, okay, I see.
Or maybe it's September 15th to the day, or maybe it's October 1st to the day after election. Mm-hmm. I don't know what because Mueller will not interfere with the election. He will not do it. So he's not going to drop any indictments near the election, but I don't know what his
So there'll be
window.
pre-election indictments and post, and I'm trying to think.
There might not be pre-election indictments. He might not be done in time for his window, whatever that is. If he wants to get everything, if he's going to stop September 15th dropping indictments so he doesn't interfere with the election, and he doesn't wrap up the September 7th stuff with Credico, or he doesn't get Miller in like he wants to, and he can't drop all of the collusion indictments until he has Stone, which means he has to have all those Stonehenge guys. He might not drop any indictments until after the election. I just don't know what his time frame is.
Interesting. Yeah.
The weight of indictments in a blue wave too would just be generally better. I think.
Yeah.
Just for morale.
Right.
I guess.
It would. It'd be good for everyone.
Yeah.
I think maybe a subpoena to Trump not an indictment, but a subpoena to make him testify prior to Kavanaugh's hearing would be helpful.
And that's pretty innocent. That's not going to fuck. I mean, it could fuck with an election as it should, but it can't be any. And no one could be like, fuck Mueller for subpoenaing someone. It's not like it's a super big move. I mean, it's a huge
Optics,
move, but it's not as big of
politically.
a move as indictments of people like
Right, it could be
Kushner.
worse. Yeah.
That's why I'd like to see that subpoena happen sooner rather than after the election.
Yeah.
But I mean, he might not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big move, not like a kill him move. Yeah.
All right. Did we get a winner for the PlayStation?
Oh, I was gonna ask Jaleesa about that. You were gonna do that, right? Remember we had.
I'm sorry, I thought you were gonna do it.
Well, we had the person.
Well, we had a
that's-
winner who
and
wanted
she
to donate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then
Mhm.
you were gonna do it because you had talked with her about you had like seen her little.
You're
her
right. That
explanation
was
and
that
stuff.
was my move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it's funny. I talked to her.
We're
like,
transparent here, guys.
Yeah.
So we're gonna announce that next week.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's good. PlayStation 4. Now I'm gonna get you a PlayStation 2. I'm kidding.
Also, the reason it's taking so long is because we've picked like 1 million people, 4 or 5, but they don't respond to us.
Yeah, they didn't get
We've
back
been
to
reaching
us.
out to people,
And then the last
yeah.
person we picked was like, "Oh, that's so cool! I want to donate it." So now we're gonna find the next person down the line.
Yeah.
Yes, transparency in government and media
and PlayStation
and podcasts. All right, are you guys ready for sabotage?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, this week in Sabotage, I found a story from our buddy Scott Stedman. He dropped it the day we record this, which is Saturday. And it's about Carter Page, our friend, and how he found out that Energy Investment Group, here's the headline, Energy Investment Group claims $350 million in capital commitment from Carter Page after 2016 election. So an investment company that's based in Vegas, that's your hometown, right, Jordan?
It is.
And this investment company with oil and gas interests in the Middle East claimed that they got a commitment of $350 million from Carter Page's Global Energy Capital after Page's involvement in the Trump campaign, okay? So the investment company, they're called RD Heritage Group. All Republicans have heritage in their...
I don't like it.
Yeah. They claimed on their website that they had secured a capital commitment of hundreds of millions of dollars from Page and his company, basically saying $350 million in capital commitment by Global Energy Capital, an investment management and advisory firm focused on the energy sector primarily in emerging markets, which means the Middle East. Global Energy Capital was founded by Carter Page. Carter has spent 7 years as an investment banker at Merrill Lynch in London, Moscow, and New York. Carter was also a foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump. So this is important because when Page testified to Congress in November of 2017, he said he had no other income beyond passive investments in 2016 and 2017. And when asked to clarify by Swalwell, he reiterated he had no clients in 2016 and 2017. So he lied to Congress. With no clients and no income and no public business transactions, it's entirely unclear how he thought he could come up with $350 million for this investment to RD Heritage. But there's email messages and calls, or well, what I should say is that I know Stedman tried to email and call them and Page and everybody, and none of them would comment on the story. Their registered address is a UPS store. Where this $350 million was going to come out of. It's a UPS store in Vegas. And the only other deal that they had going on since 2013 was earlier this year with something called Lean Life Health. That's a Canadian pharmaceutical company. And RD Heritage and all of its partners are actually not accused of any wrongdoing. They were just, Page offered him $350 million. So the question is, first of all, he lied to Congress saying he didn't have any clients. And he told Congress he had no money. So where's he going to get $350 million? Where do you think he's going to get that? I'm thinking, do you guys remember the Rosneft sell-off that Trump was supposed to get 19% of? That
yes.
Carter Page was
yeah.
a broker for? Maybe that's what he thought he was going to use to do this. But wherever it comes from or wherever it maybe didn't exist, the fact of the matter is that he lied to Congress. So I was wondering, that's why I have it in Sabotage, if you thought that you might want to bump Page up to your Fantasy Indictment League.
Yeah.
And remember, it's just for this week.
Yeah, for this week. I'm going to say no for this week because I think it would take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say the same. But it is interesting.
Same for DTJ and Kushner, though.
Yeah.
But they're on my league.
And he dresses so suspiciously.
Also, I still have 2 left. So I'm going to say yes and a random Russian to finish mine up.
Paige dresses like the guy in the Neighborhood Watch pictures, doesn't he?
The trench coat, the shadow man?
Yeah, he looks like the guy they're trying to look out for.
I was asking Scott, like, how was he think he was going to pay $350 million? Was he going to have, like, a floppy hat sale? Like,
he's Inspector Gadget.
He had no money.
Yeah.
I just assume these people always have pools of money flowing in somewhere. I just have no clue which one it would be.
And I don't know if it's specifically the Rosneft sell-off or if it's just some other thing that the Trump campaign had in the works that he had his fingers in. It could be any number of millions of bad deals, or, you know, when I say bad, I mean, well, they're bad.
Yeah.
Shady deals.
The
Who knows?
key to collusion is multiple streams of income.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Totally. All right, you guys, it's time for Q&A. So this week, well, we don't have like a theme song for Q&A, do we?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's just the piece
Should we
of
just
dead
leave it
space
for
there.
now? We'll get something next week.
Q&A, do. Okay, that's all I got. Yeah, so we wanted to do a couple of reviews. You guys have some reviews that you want to read?
Oh, yeah.
'Cause these are my favorite. Our 1-star reviews.
You want to start good or bad?
Are hilarious. Let's go. Let's start bad, and then we'll end up with the nice ones so that I feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do. Well, actually, I'm gonna pull it up really quick. Julie,
Yeah. I'll go ahead and I'll do the first one. So this is from Davy Crockett 22222. He said 3 words: Trump derangement syndrome, and then a winky face. I think the winky face is suggestive. I think he's like, I like it.
But he gave us a 1 star.
He did. So maybe he's like snarky about it, but he's like, I don't know. I just think smiley
I think he's
faces
just
are
old and he doesn't understand emojis.
Oh, that's the sad truth, probably.
Kind of like how Manafort can't figure out PDFs.
Yeah.
And DT Jr. can't figure out Photoshop. That's
true.
That's
I think
probably...
trolls are just so mysterious sometimes. They could be pretty simple too, but in this case, he might be trying to tell us something.
Maybe he's Russian.
Maybe he's trying to tell us he's Russian.
A lot of numbers in his name. It's 22222.
Yeah. Why all the 2s?
Yeah.
Suspicious amount of 2s.
Very interesting.
Reminds me of the Mitch Hedberg. I wish my phone number was 2222222. And people are like, how do I get a hold of you? I mean, just press 2 for a while.
That's funny.
He has an odd number of 2s, I think, also, which is really not OCD.
We got 5 2s in this name.
That does mean 10,
odd
though.
number of even numbers.
Yeah,
Very
so
weird.
I wonder, does he like the number 2 itself, or does he like 22?
Davy Crockett.
Yeah, like, I don't know where it ends. Where does the madness end?
King of the Wild Frontier.
Yeah, tweet us, Davey.
Trump derangement syndrome. I've been hearing this go around, and to me, what it sounds like is that people are saying that Trump has derangement syndrome, and I agree.
It's
with
terrible.
That.
You should get that checked out. That is sad.
Yeah, it took me a while to decipher that negative review. I didn't really understand exactly what they were saying, and then they put a winky face.
Yeah. I think he likes it.
I think it's again misunderstanding of technology by Republicans.
Yeah,
by Trump supporters. I shouldn't say Republicans. I should say Trump supporters.
Emojis, reviews, the whole thing. They're just confused.
They're very confused.
What's yours?
All right, so mine is by Mission Accomplished. Starting off bad. That's not a good. Reminds me of Bush too much. And okay, so this review is from. It's titled "Nasty Language." She says, or he, women talking like 15-year-old boys with phrases like "lube the truth." There's more snide and snark than facts.
Yeah, I think that your misogyny, you can't see past women using the F word, and therefore you don't hear the facts.
Yeah, and people love lube the truth.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah, and also it's a fucking 2-hour-long podcast. We have more snide starks than facts. Shut up. And calling us boys. That's I mean, not that I take offense to being called boys, but I take offense to women not being able to talk in ways that apparently only boys talk like.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that's really what it gets down to, the misogyny, like you were saying, AG.
But it kind of has a woman sound to it, right?
It does.
That's what I thought too. It sounds like a lady.
Like a disapproving mother.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, nasty language. And I've never heard a man be like, these women in their nasty language.
Well, Trump called Hillary nasty.
That's
nasty woman.
True. And what's up with the name, Mission Accomplished?
Oh, that's an old Bush thing where he, after the war, he's like, mission accomplished. And then it totally wasn't, and we're still at war.
They're not pro-Bush, or they are pro-Bush?
They're pro-Bush.
Oh.
And then Trump also used the mission accomplished thing, and everyone laughed at him. Like, maybe you shouldn't use that because it's one of the biggest political faux pas in the century. So anyway, what about some good ones? You got any good ones?
Oh yeah, we have so many good ones.
Plenty of good ones.
Okay, if I say one, Jaleesa, that you already had, you can stop me.
No problem.
I have a lot. Okay, so I like this one. This one is from Jim in Ohio too. Also another 2. I don't know. It's called Must Listen Podcast for the Trump Resistors. Having consumed many podcasts surrounding the Trump-Russian scandals, this is one of the best. Not sure why someone wrote it was low-quality sound. Audio quality is great, and the show has high production values as well. Shout out to Jaleesa.
Oh, thank you.
Woo.
Yeah, smart, funny, and insightful. MSW is what podcasting should be. Thank you, Jim.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
I
5
like
stars
that
for
one.
you, Jim.
Yes, right back at you.
All right, give us one, Jaleesa.
Okay, this is from Abby Buzzon. Says, mind-blowing facts. This crew is hilarious and smart and amazing. If they're wrong about a fact, they come back to it and correct themselves. That is how you know they are good, honest journalists. This is my new NPR. Yeah.
Thank you.
That is a big compliment. That's huge.
Are we journalists?
I mean, I don't call myself one, but I'm not one to tell someone what to call me sometimes.
I mean, if you, yeah, that's true. What is the definition of a journalist exactly?
We're reporters. I think to a degree we report.
I think we're fourth estate, but I don't know. I feel like that's like, I feel like so legit. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a huge compliment. Thank you. Thank you, Abby.
Sometimes we get insights from guests and stuff that may have not been previously reported.
And they're journalists. Yeah, so, I mean, if they like us.
And I am strong with the imposter syndrome, as we've discussed. So maybe it's just me not feeling like I'm worthy of that title.
Yeah, I don't know what the definition of, maybe we should look that up. That's hilarious that we're having a conversation about this. Because we all have imposter syndrome. Did you want more?
Well, yeah, one more each. One more each.
Okay. This one is how to choose. All right. This one's called Try One Episode You Will Not Regret by 46 Forever. Don't know what that means. With frequent swearing and a blunt truth that is not matched anywhere else, these 3 ladies cover the Mueller investigation with wit and charm not found elsewhere. While I was initially looking for a recording of congressional debates, I cannot be happier I accidentally stumbled across MSW. Whatever your politics are, MSW explains every detail of the Mueller investigation with proper background so all may understand what is going on in the day's current politics. While MSW is unapologetically progressive, listeners will enjoy a refreshing return to a main focus of the defense of public information and democracy.
Damn.
She must be into 15-year-old boys because she likes the way we talk. So.
Oh my goodness, that is such a thorough review. That is so cool.
There were a couple more sentences.
Yeah,
actually.
46 Forever. That's what's up.
Yeah, 46 Forever.
46 Forever. Nice. I have a short one to wrap it up. This one's called Put Some Beans on It by Autumn Joy. Another winky face. This one seems positive, though. And they say, you're going to love listening, but hate waiting for the next episode. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Yay.
that's like the I hate to see you leave, but I love to watch you walk away.
Yeah, with a little less sexism in it.
True. But I mean, I think when it's from a woman, Autumn Joy, I just assume that's a woman. Now that I think about it, I'm part of the
problem. Do you know why they love to see you walk away?
Because of my butt.
Yeah. All right, just checking.
Yeah, it's empowering, I think, if coming from certain, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Empowering in the butt stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for leaving reviews, everybody. It's really nice.
Seriously.
Definitely.
Yeah, stop by Apple Podcasts, give us one. We would love you. And subscribe. It helps get the word out, believe it or not. The whole point, our mission on this podcast is to make sure everybody who can will get to hear this so that they can understand what's going on, but also not experience the fatigue from the mainstream media or the and I'm not slamming the mainstream media. I'm just saying, with a little fun and lighthearted, uplifting and comforting remarks, maybe it helps mitigate fatigue and exhaustion from all this news. So in order to get the word out, for some reason, you gotta subscribe on Apple and leave us a review. That's the best way to do it. They've told me, and but I can't edit PDFs or use emojis properly, so I might not be the right person.
We should do an edited version of a bad review, a bad Photoshop
fix
version.
that for you. Yeah,
I did that one time. Somebody tweeted out something about I love how Obama and Hillary are giant pieces of shit, all in caps, and I crossed out everything except I love Obama and Hillary.
Yeah.
And I said, here, I fixed your tweet for you. But like blacked it out, like obviously.
That's cute.
Didn't even try to Photoshop it. All right, so we've got a couple questions this week. At T. Ferrandino asked if there will be a scheduled protest to protect Mueller. The only one I know about is the one that would be triggered by Mueller or Rosenstein's firing. And for info on that, you can check out TrumpIsNotAboveTheLaw.org. And then you can find the protest near you for when that happens. At _RadiatorCat, yay, wants to know if I think Hope Hicks' interaction with Trump is obstruction or witness tampering. And Marissa Gabrielle says, quote, Hope Hicks meeting with Trump on a plane, witness tampering or butt stuff?
I know. Do butt stuff tonight.
But I don't want to do butt stuff tonight.
So, as you probably all have heard, Hope Hicks boarded Air Force One this week with Trump to go to Ohio. And for a group of people who flipped out about Loretta Lynch meeting on a plane on a tarmac in Phoenix with Bill Clinton for 10 seconds, even though she had nothing to do with the Hillary investigation because Comey was taking it out on his own, which is why you guys wanted him fired in the first place. So what? You can't come to me and say he went rogue and he did it himself without talking to his AG and deputy AG, and so that's why he was fired. Oh, but look, the AG is talking to Bill Clinton on the plane, so they're totally conspiring because she's in charge of that investigation. You can't say she is and then say she isn't. No, whatever. Shut up. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, she boarded the plane, and someone was like, maybe she was wearing a wire, and no, the Secret Service won't let you on with a wire. They'll find it. So I doubt that that's the case, but I'm sure Mueller might want to bring her back in and ask her what happened on the plane. I would. So we might be able to look for that subpoena soon, or she might just voluntarily go in and speak to him about it.
Yeah, I saw a headline that suggested that maybe she could, it was an opinion piece, I think, that maybe she's thinking about getting back into working for him or something.
Oh, yeah, she was going to take a position at his campaign, doing something, for his campaign, for his 2020 campaign.
Oh, yeah?
Something like that. Or maybe work back at the White House with them or something like that.
Yeah, I can find the source and bring it back next week.
That's weird. At Big Politics Nerd wants to know the word for the frustration we all feel waiting for indictments, kind of like the political equivalent of blue balls. Well, as you know, I've compared it to waiting for the beat to drop in an EDM song, but at Sam Stanton says it's called sadistic edging. And he says that's a new phrase. I'm like, no, that's a pretty old phrase.
I feel like it's a purgatory.
Yeah?
Yeah, like we're all kind of being punished, sort of, for not staying on top of all of this as a citizenry,
That's meta.
Maybe.
Yeah, I like that. It falls into the simulation idea too, whether it's religious or whatever. It's like the idea is that we're all kind of left behind.
Yeah. We took our democracy for granted and fucking sicknesses have taken over.
Mm-hmm.
It's not our fault though, it's their fault, but I'm just saying.
Apathy.
Yeah.
It's everyone's problem. Sam Stanton also wanted to know something now that Peter Smith is back in the conversation. But Peter Smith is the guy who killed himself, remember, with the no foul play note.
Mm-hmm.
There's a BuzzFeed piece out on him now. And at the time, Shane Harris told us he felt that there was no foul play as his suicide note read, but he says he never felt right about it. So let's go over that timeline. I went over this timeline this week when I spoke at the Kremlin Annex protests. June 7th, 2016. That was Giuliani's pre-Trump Tower meeting. Do you remember when he was like, we had a pre-meeting, Trump wasn't there? That was June 7th. And that night, Trump promised a speech about dirt on Hillary the following Monday. Then the next day, June 8th, Russia launched DC leaks. And then on the 9th was the Trump Tower meeting with Veselnitskaya. 2 days later, on the 11th, Assange appeared on UK television saying Hillary dirt was coming. And then on the 13th, Trump was supposed to give his dirt speech, but didn't, likely because he thought he'd have physical emails in his hands from that meeting. But instead, they just promised they would set up the dirt and agreed to set up leaking outlets like DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0 with payment going through one of Manafort's Cypriot intermediaries. Remember his notes from the Fusion GPS transcripts? Mm-hmm. June 14th, next day, Russia launched Guccifer 2.0. And the next day, Guccifer leaked DNC and DCCC emails. Then between June 14th and July 27th is when Peter Smith was looking for Hillary's emails on the dark web, said dark web folks had reached out to him, and he went to this guy named Tate at the FBI and asked him to verify if these were really Hillary's emails. And then, of course, July 27th, Trump gave his public wink telling Russia to hack Hillary, right? If you're listening, 30,000 emails. And hours later, they attempted to, but never succeeded that we know about. And Peter Smith says he was working with Kellyanne Conway and Clovis and Flynn and Bannon. And BuzzFeed is now reporting that Smith spent money looking for Hillary's emails and even set up an account to manage the cash flow. 88 total transactions with about $140,000. The FBI agent that he was working with, or talked to, named Matt Tate, who warned Smith that whomever was saying they had Hillary emails was likely a part of Russia's campaign against the U.S. to interfere in the elections. The word is that Flynn was in contact with Smith about all this, Peter Smith, and he's been cooperating with special counsel for a while now. So we might see this in a separate indictment from the Trump Tower conspiracy, or it could have all been connected. We just don't know. My guess is that it was one of several side efforts, and Flynn is going to bring down, I think, probably Clovis, Kellyanne, and Bannon along with that, now that Peter Smith is deceased. So that's all the weird trying to find Hillary's emails and who was coordinating it.
Yeah.
And I think that Stone is such a big piece of that. And speaking of that, Chris Bliss 1 says he used to think Stone was a bit player, but now he suspects there's something about Assange and Guccifer we don't know. Possibly a big deal. Well, that's it. Here's what I think. I think that in the Trump Tower meeting with Veselnitskaya, Donald Trump Jr. and Manafort were promised hacked emails, so they agreed to set up DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0, and Manafort was said that they could pay them to do that out of one of his Cypriot accounts. And Stone said he knew a guy who could get WikiLeaks for the Trump campaign instead. And that person is Credico. And they'd be way better at deploying hacked documents and emails. WikiLeaks is just a much bigger platform than DC Leaks or Guccifer 2.0, which, they said were Romanian and not tied to Russia, but the indictments that Mueller dropped prove that they were. So Stone was the go-between for the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks. So who knows better whether or not Manafort also paid WikiLeaks, but he certainly paid Russia. And so you can put some beans on that if you want. That's all conjecture, by the way, wild conjecture.
Wild.
And at Johnny O75 says, to be honest, I'm kind of a hater. I'm not at all happy that people have found the Mueller, She Wrote podcast. You all have no idea how smart I was sounding to all my friends when special counsel discussions started. Now they know I'm a fraud.
That's funny.
Thanks, Johnny. You guys, that's the show. Any last thoughts?
No, I think that covers so much.
It was a lot this week.
There was so much.
Yeah. I feel like more and more hope is dropping every week, though.
Yeah. Hope Hicks.
Oh.
It's definitely picked up about 3 weeks ago, and it hasn't stopped ever since that treason megasode. You should check that out if you haven't. And the news, I think, is not going to stop until maybe we get that little election break, from Mueller going silent, radio silence, so that because he's 100% going to make sure he doesn't interfere in the elections. That would be bad. For both sides. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Please become a patron. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. We love you so much. Seriously, our listeners are the best listeners in all the land. So we really appreciate your support, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I've been AG.
I've been Jaleesa Johnson.
I've been Jordan Coburn.
And this is Mueller, She Wrote. Mueller, She Wrote is produced and engineered by AG with editing and logo design by Jaleesa Johnson. Our sound engineering is courtesy of Resonant Recordings. Market consulting by Amanda Reeder at Unicorn Creative. Our digital media director and subscriber managers are Jordan Coburn, Sarah Lee Steiner, and Sarah Hirschberger Valencia. Fact-checking and research by AG with support from Jaleesa Johnson and Jordan Coburn. Our web design and branding are by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios, and our website is MuellerSheWrote.com.